Saturdays at 3:30, it's big time. Will the Hoosiers keep their undefeated season and playoff hopes alive when they host defending champs Michigan? Today on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Wake up, it's game day. Good morning and happy college football Saturday to you from all of us here at CBS Sports HQ. And welcome into college football pregame presented by Hellmann's, America's #1 mayonnaise. I'm Jordan Giorgio alongside Damien Harris, Danny Kanell, and Beanie Wells with you. You guys, after one of the more upset-filled weeks in college football last Saturday, week 11 may be just as chaotic. What are you most looking forward to today, Danny?
I think we're going to see more upsets. Obviously, we have top 25 teams playing against each other. A lot of games we've all kind of dubbed as playoff elimination games. So a lot of teams are going to find out whether their playoff fate it continues on or whether they're going to be sent home when their season's all done.
Damien, what are you looking forward to today?
I don't know if you guys heard, but there's a matchup in Death Valley.
There may be.
A night game in Death Valley.
Nothing
Alabama,
like it.
LSU, there's nothing like it in the world. These are two teams who are on the brink of elimination for the college football playoff. It's going to be a huge competitive game with a lot of stakes on the line.
Look, we're in November. This is where championship teams start to show themselves. We're going to figure out who's going to be fighting for a conference championship, who's going to fight for an opportunity to get in the college football playoff. Well, can't wait for it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We are taking you all the way up to the noon kickoffs here on CBS Sports HQ. Well, this week, you guys, the first college football playoff rankings were released, and Oregon remains your #1 team in the nation, ahead of Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, and Texas to round out the top 5. Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, and Boise State round out the top 12 teams that would compete in the newly expanded college football playoff if it all ended today. But will that be the case next week, as it's another big weekend in college football? We're in a critical month for many teams, especially two who face off today in prime time. It's an SEC matchup. It's number 11 Alabama at 15 LSU. Damien, you know firsthand what it's like to play in Death Valley at night. What are you expecting?
Oh my goodness, Death Valley is going to be rocking. These are two teams who are competing to get in the college football playoff, trying to prove that they're still relevant in the SEC. You got Jalen Milroe, Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, the field is going to be full of superstars that have elite capability. I mean, this is going to be a huge game for both teams. Both coaches, Brian Kelly, Kalen DeBoer, are definitely under a lot of pressure to win this game.
Yeah, will the loser be eliminated from the playoff race? It's a fair question to ask. Our guys on set will give you the answer later on in the show. Elsewhere in the SEC, Georgia's gauntlet of an SEC schedule continues today when the #3 Bulldogs take on #16 Ole Miss in Oxford. Dogs a slight favorite, Danny, as they continue to find ways to stack wins despite turnover issues from their quarterback, Carson Beck.
Jordan, that is question #1. Is Carson Beck going to stop throwing it to the other football team? 3 picks versus Texas, 3 versus Alabama, 3 versus the University of Florida. If he has 3 today, they're going to lose the game. Then the question I have, Jackson Dart coming off a 500-plus yard performance. That was against Arkansas. Can he do what Texas could not? Can he put up points against this Georgia defense, which is so difficult to score against? That, to me, is probably the matchup that determines the outcome.
It's sure to be an intense environment, but something we know this Georgia team is equipped to handle. Meanwhile, out in Austin, #5 Texas welcomes Florida in a game where both teams need a win for different reasons, Beanie.
Now, I can't wait to watch this matchup. You know, last time we saw Texas play, we saw them versus Vanderbilt, and that was a very tough outing for them. They did indeed escape by with the win, but coming off a bye week, will they get off to a slow start? Florida's playing a lot better, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Should have beat Georgia, in my opinion. Can they catch the Longhorn sleepwalking? That's going to be a big question.
Yeah, and the big injury we are monitoring, and this one includes Florida's quarterback DJ Lagway, as his status for this game remains up in the air, but we will continue to keep you posted with any updates as we take you all the way up to kickoff at noon. Switching gears here to the Big 12, where Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes look to keep pace in the Big 12 when they travel to Lubbock to take on Texas Tech, a team not to be overlooked, Damien.
Absolutely not. I mean, Texas Tech has Taj Brooks, one of the most underrated running backs in the country. They're going to have to stop him. When you watch what happened in the Kansas State game, DJ Gidden was all the difference. That run game made a huge, huge impact on that game. Colorado, the door is open for them to get into the playoffs, but But they have to take care of their business, and that starts today against Texas Tech.
Yep, it starts at 4 p.m. where the Buffaloes are a 4.5-point favorite in that one. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, Beanie, your Ohio State Buckeyes host Purdue in a game that they can't afford to lose, but also need to make a statement after a couple recent wins were too close for comfort.
You know, I think they will. You know, I think Ryan Day and his football team got the monkey off their back last week in Nittany Lion Country. I think they go on the road this football game and put the pedal to the metal. They're finding their stride. They got to the offensive line gelled and healthy. I can't wait to watch the Buckeyes and see how they fix the issues and how much better they're on offense.
You don't sound too nervous.
No, he's like, I'm all set. Buckeyes, he shouldn't be, because you saw they're a heavy 37.5-point favorite over the Boilermakers. Also in the Big Ten is where you'll find our game of the week on CBS when the undefeated and 8th-ranked Indiana Hoosiers look to keep things rolling against Michigan today, Danny.
Jordan, this is the most disrespected team in the country. The fact they're ranked where they are outside of the top 5 is atrocious to me. Everyone's criticized their schedule. Now they get a chance against a true blue blood in the Big Ten that's already played Texas, that's already played Oregon. You can have a little score comparison here, which I wonder if Kirk Cignetti is going to take into consideration. I know Michigan is beat up. They've got some question marks on the defensive side of the ball with injuries. Who's playing quarterback? I still think this will be a good test for Indiana, but I'm going to go with like every other test they've had. I think they pass it with flying colors.
Well, this Kirk Cignetti-led team has been phenomenal all season, and man, oh man, have the tables turned. The powerhouse that was Michigan, the defending champs, and now you have Indiana undefeated on the season and just rolling. What has been the most impressive about how Kirk Cignetti has been able to turn this program around?
Well, I want to make note here because this is the first time that Indiana has been favored against Michigan since 1968, wow. I think. Who even know they were keeping odds back then? Like, who would have even thought of that, right? But when you think about this Indiana team, Kirk Cignetti has done a great job of just keeping them locked in and focused week in and week out. They don't listen to the noise, whether it's, oh, they're great or, oh, they're not playing good competition. They're just playing a good style of football, offensively, defensively, special teams, run game, pass game. They're doing everything really, really well. And I've been super surprised to see Curtis Rourke and the comeback that he had last week coming off that hand injury. I mean, he threw for 4 touchdowns. I mean, he looked really good in that game. I just think that Indiana is a very complete team. I think Kirk Cignetti, being from the Nick Saban coaching tree, he understands what these moments mean. He understands how to get his team motivated and keep their laser focus on the task at hand, which is going 1-0 each and every week.
It's a crazy turn of events. I mean, Beanie, you played for Ohio State. Were you ever scared or intimidated playing Indiana back in your day?
I think a couple of years there, like 2016, 2017, they gave Ohio State a run for their money. But when I was playing, there was never a time where you were thinking about Indiana being dominant. Now they're on the brink of school history, first 10-win season in the career there for the University of Indiana. I think they're doing phenomenal. Kirk Cignetti, it's just everything about him just exudes confidence.
He wins.
You know, when you get guys that buy into what he believes, I mean, it's incredible what they're doing there. That's sort of amazing.
One of the reasons I think it was so huge, and I've mentioned it a couple times on this show, he brings almost his entire staff from James Madison, where they had won championships, brings 13 players with him from James Madison. So they were already used to a winning culture, and they were familiar with the system that they wanted to run. So you have that confidence of those players, and then you have the leadership of, hey, you know how it is in practice. You're a running back. You guys know you can help out a young receiver. Say, hey, this is what we want. This is what we're trying to accomplish on this play. This is how we practice at this pace. Like all those types of things that are so vital to a program's success. I think that's a big reason why. And then you find a quarterback like Curtis Rourke, who won at the MAC, played a lot of football. He brings leadership, and he's been one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the country. And I think might creep into the Heisman conversation. Maybe not after today, but if he pulled off the upset against Ohio State, I think that would be his ticket to New York City.
You know, when you're a team like Indiana, you go undefeated, there's always going to be haters and people who say that, argue that you haven't played anybody yet. What would you say to those people who think that?
They didn't. Miami hasn't played anybody yet. Nobody's criticizing them for it. They're still ranked in the top 4. You know, there's other teams. Texas really doesn't have a great win. They played against Georgia. That was a tough opponent. But and the other thing is they have been more impressive than Miami. Miami has not played a ranked opponent, and Louisville's the one ranked opponent, but they have blown out everybody. Indiana has been in complete control of their games, leaving no doubt who the better team was. I would say those combination are the things why you should be saying, hey, we're underrated and we deserve more respect.
All right, let's go ahead and talk some more about Indiana and the season that they're having as we welcome for the first time today our own Sportsline analyst, Mackenzie Brooks, for more on Indiana's playoff hopes as the Hoosiers finally, Mackenzie, broke into the top 10 this week in the AP poll and ranked ranked 8th in the first college football playoff rankings. Hoosiers 9-0. Above them are 5 teams with 1 loss, and 2 of them are in the Big Ten. Are we undervaluing the record for Indiana?
From a quant perspective or a model perspective, I think I can speak for a lot of them to say that we always are factoring in your schedule and the strength of your schedule and the strength of your opponent and neutral site power rankings. And that is why Indiana, you'll see lower than a Penn State. Even their odds to make the playoff, odds to win the conference championship, all a lot shorter than teams like Penn State. Now, what I will say is getting a win against a team like Michigan, although Michigan isn't what we thought they were going to be, like Danny mentioned, just a big program, a blue blood here. That will really be the final bullet on that resume to say, hey, we really should be a respected team. And I think that's when you'll start to see them move up in the power rankings here. So it's the style of how they beat Michigan that I think will speak really, really loudly for this team. Huge game for them this week to show that they should be respected.
Yeah, a chance to make a statement elsewhere. Let's check in with the SEC here, Mackenzie. Big primetime matchup in Death Valley between Alabama and LSU. Huge game for playoff implications, as we know, but is the loser really out of the 12-team playoff?
It's hard to say anybody's ever really out. I'd say for LSU, I'd call them basically out of the playoff if they lose this game. Now, if LSU wins, it is about just winning out. And depending on if Lagway's playing at the end of the season, that could be very possible for them. However, it's still under a coin flip for them to make the playoff, even if they do so, because they have that head-to-head loss against Texas A&M. They need to see Texas A&M crumble. As far as Alabama, a win here and winning out would be absolutely huge for them. I'd almost be willing to say calling them a playoff lock, which I know Danny in there is shaking his head pretty upset about that one. But again, it's about controlling your own destiny. So winning this game helps you control your own destiny into the playoff. If Alabama loses this, it's not very likely they make it in, but it's not impossible. They're really hoping for one Big 12 team, one ACC team, no Notre Dame. Like, if other things happen in other conferences, that starts to allow maybe a 4th, 5th SEC team.
A playoff lock for Bama. That's one way to start the show, Kens. I'm loving it. Don't go anywhere. More from you later on in the show. Time now for Motivations, presented by Hellmann's, America's #1 mayonnaise, as we get back to talking about the big primetime matchup in Baton Rouge today. Alabama taking on LSU. Is there any bigger motivation, Damien, because you've been there, than playing in Death Valley at night for Alabama?
It's hard. It's hard to find more motivation than going to Death Valley for a night game. And I mean, when I look at these two teams, people don't understand there's an underlying rivalry here. The reason for that is because LSU is the one team, no matter what conference, no matter how good Alabama is, that will show up and try to punch Alabama in the mouth every single opportunity that they get. They're the only team historically to be able to match up with Alabama, talent for talent, position for position. And they've got to respect that, because, again, when you've got a team that will punch you in the mouth and is so talented, you have to respond to that. You have to respect that. Then with this elimination talk that we're having right now, I mean, Brian Kelly in year 3 has not delivered. He has not taken that next step for this program. Kalen DeBoer in his first season, you got 2 SEC losses, both on the road. They are on the road tonight. You lost to Vandy, you lose to Tennessee, and you're on the brink of not making the playoffs in your first year at Alabama. So fans are not going to be happy. People are not going to be happy either way this goes. So if LSU loses, fans aren't going to be happy. If Alabama loses, I think we know what the questions are going to be for Kalen DeBoer. So there's a lot of motivating factors in this game, and it's going to show in this game tonight.
All 3 of us played at programs where if you didn't win a national championship, you felt like a failure. Like the season was done. Like, yeah, it was nice to go to a big bowl, but it wasn't the goal at the beginning of the season. That is what's driving both of these teams, because if you lose this game, you lose that chance. And then all of a sudden, you feel like a failure. Like, so that's the bottom line of what is driving these teams. It's to stay in that playoff hunt to win the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys said, you want to get in the college football playoff. And then the way that the season has went for these two teams this year, it's been ugly on a lot of different ways, especially when you look at LSU and how their defense has played. Yes, they've gotten better rushing the passer. They got 28 sacks this year, which is very good in terms of how they stack up in the country. But on the defensive side, when you watch them in their big games, they've given up way too many big-time plays. So I think in this matchup, they're going to be trying to eliminate this offense for Alabama and what Jalen Milroe can do. And they want to get in. And I think they have a better shot at being a team that can make a good run down the stretch if they do indeed get in the college football playoff. But it's going to be a heck of a matchup.
It will be.
What do you remember most about playing in that environment? Ooh. Is there any specific memory that sticks out?
So my senior year, we played in Baton Rouge, and I think it was #1 versus #3. And so they had Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. I mean, all the LSU greats. They were dancing pregame. I mean, the fans, the atmosphere. I think a night game in Death Valley, Alabama, LSU, best environment in the country. So We put it on them, though. It was 33-0. I mean, it's supposed
he
to be.
remembers the score.
Yeah, I was trying to build it up, you know what I mean, to make it sound competitive, but we routed them. We gave up a goose egg on defense. We ran the ball well. We passed well. Like, we just completely dominated. And in an atmosphere like this, a place like Death Valley, to have the fans go quiet, to have the whole entire fan base just silent by the end of the game, that's what you want, and that's going to be another motivating factor for Alabama going into this game.
All right, it's going to be a fun one. We're just getting started here on college football pregame. When we return, LSU and Alabama aren't the only teams today that need a win today to keep their playoff hopes alive. Ole Miss has a huge game at home against Georgia as they remain on the college football playoff bubble. We discuss the Rebels' chances next. Plus, the race to the Big 12 title continues for Dion and company as they face a Texas Tech team today in Lubbock that is not to be overlooked. We tell you why next. Well, this just in, out of the NFL, where the Saints are expected to place wide receiver Chris Olave on the IR. That's per multiple reports. Olave suffered his fourth documented concussion since entering the NFL in last week's loss to the Panthers. He was transported to the hospital and was released later that day. Olave will miss a minimum of 4 games and will continue to meet with specialists to assess his eventual return to action. That's in the NFL, but it brings us to our injury report for today's college football slate. We will continue to keep you updated throughout the course of our show for those who are listed as questionable or game time decisions. Starting with the Big Ten game of the week on CBS at 3:30, Michigan cornerback Will Johnson is expected to be out against number 8 Indiana today. This will be the third straight game Johnson has missed due to a lower body injury. The All-American is considered one of the top cornerback prospects for the upcoming NFL draft. Over to another huge SEC matchup. Ole Miss versus Georgia. Rebel star wide receiver Trey Harris has been upgraded to questionable with that nagging groin injury. But running back Henry Parrish Jr. will be sidelined after injuring his leg last week against Arkansas. Also in the SEC, Florida quarterback DJ Lagway is listed as questionable versus 5th-ranked Texas with a hamstring injury. Our own Matt Zenitz reports Lagway wants to play, but Aiden Warner is more likely to get the start for the Gators. Running back Montrell Johnson is also trending towards missing that game. Army standout quarterback Bryson Daly will return for today's game at North Texas. That's according to ESPN. Daly was a late scratch last week with an undisclosed injury. Daly is tied for 2nd in the nation with 19 rushing touchdowns and has 7 passing TDs to 0 interceptions. And ESPN also reports Georgia Tech's quarterback Haynes King will be a game-time decision against number 4 Miami. King will dress and warm up and attempt to play after setting out the past 2 games. If he cannot play, it'll be freshman Aaron Philo. That's the latest on your injury report. But after the release of the first college football playoff rankings, many teams are on bubble watch today and playing for their playoff lives, including 3 teams in the SEC. You see there Texas A&M, LSU, and Ole Miss. And we begin with the Rebels, who host number 2 Georgia today. Ole Miss, Beanie, facing a must-win game today to keep their playoff hopes alive. Do you trust that Lane Kiffin and company can get it done?
You know what? I really do. This is one of the more interesting games in the country. And I trust Lane Kiffin because of that high octane, that potent offense that they have. Jackson Dart leading the way. Last week he had 515 yards passing, a school record. But then you got Jordan Watkins on the outside edge that had 254. Caden Lee, so they didn't miss Trey Harris out there. And then on the flip side of that, when you look at Georgia, Carson Beck has been an extreme issue for Georgia in taking care of the football. If he does not take care of the ball, Ole Miss is going to capitalize and going to score with this offense, making it very tough for Georgia to win this football game. I like Lane Kiffin's chances, and give me Jackson Dart to get in this Heisman race after today.
Okay, little dark horse there.
I'm with Beanie, and I want to piggyback off something he said, because we want to talk about Lane Kiffin for a second. Him and Steve Sarkisian are from the same coaching tree. So I have to be confident in the fact that Lane Kiffin studied Texas's offense and Steve Sarkisian and their game plan against Georgia just as much as he studied Georgia's defense. And he is coming prepared with a plan. I fully expect him to have answers for this Georgia pass rush, to have options in the secondary, because we know Georgia's secondary is not what they usually are. So I fully believe that Lane Kiffin has a plan. It's just about if it works. Do his players show up and play? And we've talked about it. Lane Kiffin does not win these kind of games. Well, you've got the offensive firepower. You've got the quarterback. You've got the skill players. You've even got the defense. Ole Miss's defense is much improved than what we've seen in the past couple years. But can he get these guys geared up to play a very good Georgia football team?
I'm curious what the quarterback on set has to say, because you mentioned this quarterback matchup. It's Jackson Dart and Carson Beck in this one. 2 quarterbacks who have been trending in opposite directions. Who do you have having the edge?
At the quarterback position, I have to go with Jackson Dart.
Absolutely.
He's been more consistent. He is, I think, if he wins this game, he would jump probably more than any other player this weekend in the Heisman race, getting a win against Georgia. Carson Beck is having a crisis of confidence right now. He does not feel comfortable on the field. He's not seeing the field well. And it is impacting his success, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
3 interceptions versus Florida, and they were moving the ball at will. He even said after the game, the only thing that stopped was me throwing interceptions. So where is his psyche now? And I would say his confidence has to be an all-time low. You know what that means? I think you're going to see ETN get a heavy dose of the run. And I think the formula for a Georgia win is the same thing that happened at Texas. Bring that defense, travel with that, and hopefully Carson Beck doesn't throw more interceptions, and you get something going on the ground. Because I don't picture any world with Jackson Dart throws for 500 yards against Georgia's defense. But can he get 300? Because I think
easily.
Can he get 30 points, 35 points? Because I think that's enough to win the game. You said easily. I don't know.
300 yards easily?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't believe it. I don't believe in this Georgia secondary. I'll go back to the Mississippi State game. Mississippi State absolutely torched them down the field. And like I talked about before the Georgia-Texas matchup, the secondary gets really confused with eye candy, with motion. When you take one receiver and motion from one side of the field to the other, they're not disciplined with their eyes. And when you've got Jackson Dart with all these weapons, I think 300 yards is, I'm not going to say it's a lock, but I'm going to say I would be confident that he would be able to do that. Plus, we are talking about Carson Beck having a historically bad season for his career. If you can guarantee that that Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin in this offense are going to get 2 or 3 extra possessions, I like Ole Miss's chances on offense. I'm going to guarantee that. I think Carson Beck is good for 2 picks today. Okay. Thank you. That might be closer to a lock.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned the run game for Georgia, Danny. On the opposite sideline, Ole Miss, you just heard in our injury report, Henry Parrish is out. Will be on the sideline today. This running back room for the Rebels just facing so much adversity. How do you overcome that?
It's hard. You just got to stay healthy, and it's not as easy to say it as to do it. But you got to live in the training room. Guys don't want to do that. You have to take care of yourself from a rehabilitation standpoint. You got to get your rest. You got to eat. You got to hydrate. And I'm not going to say that they haven't done that, but whatever has kept these guys off the field is obviously a problem. And then in a game like this, it puts immense pressure on Jackson Dart to throw for 300 yards or 400 yards, to have them, put them in a favorable chance to win. But you just want to see those guys get back healthy, because when Ole Miss can be balanced, whenever they can run the ball and throw the ball, that's when they're the most dangerous.
Watch out for Jackson Dart and his legs, because he is the second leading rusher on the team, and they're banged up. Like, I don't expect him to be running a ton of quarterback leads, but it's those hidden yards, key situations, 3rd downs, 4th downs, trying to convert. That's why I think he's dangerous.
And navigating the pocket with this Georgia pass rush, because that's something that Quinn Ewers could not do.
Remember Arch did? Yeah. Remember Arch couldn't throw.
Exactly.
He's still so young.
But then you've got Jackson Dart, who's got both. He can navigate the pocket, he can use his legs, and he can push the ball down the field to his playmakers. Like, he's got a very, very good opportunity for himself to set himself up for a Heisman conversation, to win this game, to get themselves back in the CFP conversation. Like, they have everything on the table in front of them today.
Daddy, we talked you into it. Ole Miss is winning, right?
Yeah, I think we just did. I think you just.
We're going to pick it later.
All right, we are going to pick it later. I like that tease. All right, let's pivot here to the ACC, you guys. Virginia Tech hosts a desperate Clemson team. Right now, Tigers 6-2 on the season, but 5-1 in the ACC. 1 game behind Miami and SMU in the standings right now. Just how bad does Clemson need this win, Danny?
Oh, it's desperation time. The loss against Louisville, I thought, was one of those times in a program where you come to a crisis, right? And Clemson's had some rough seasons based on their standard, but this was one of the worst losses I've seen for Dabo Swinney. The way it unfolded, the way the expectation was for this season, the way they've had Cade Klubnik playing better, and you come back and you lay an egg at home where the game isn't even close. There was definitely some management issues late in the game when he didn't go for 2 and probably should have. Not probably, he 100% should have gone for 2 in that point in the game. I wonder how this team responds. They've always responded well to Dabo and the culture that he's built. This is a real test of character for Clemson, and they're going into a place in Lane Stadium, and we always talk about great atmospheres. It's one of the best atmospheres in college football. They need to bounce back and get off the mat. If they don't, I think you're doing a lot of soul searching and possibly changing your philosophy if you're Dabo Swinney.
Well, our own Josh Pate, who we will hear from a little bit later on in the show, said that last week's loss to Louisville did permanent damage to Dabo Swinney at Clemson. It seems like Danny is in agreement with him. Are you, Beanie?
I am. Yeah. And it wasn't like it was a Cade Klubnik issue or a Phil Maffa issue. It was a defense issue. And they allowed Louisville to run the ball over 200 yards on them. And now when you're talking about playing Virginia Tech, Basu Tootin. Hey, he's going to tote that thing tonight. 100%. So that's a guy that they got to worry about. And not only him, they got to worry about the quarterback, because he can pull the ball down and run with his legs as well. And I think that's going to give Clemson so many fits and going to cause issues for Dabo and Clemson moving forward. So this is a must-win for those guys, but I don't think it's going to be an easy one at all.
And let's not forget, Virginia Tech took Miami to the wire.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Miami barely escaped with a victory. And since that loss, they've gone 3-1.
Yeah.
They've been playing good football. Obviously, you mentioned Tootin. Like, this is a good Virginia Tech team. If Clemson is still licking their wounds from this Louisville loss, this is going to be another loss for them, and then your entire season becomes a failure.
You know what I hate that I did this. I fell for the fool's gold of Clemson's schedule.
Why? Just tell us why.
Because the brand bias. Like I did. I thought, oh, Clemson's always good. And so when I saw them, because anybody else gets blown out by Georgia, you're kind of like, oh, maybe that's a sign of who they really are.
Right.
But they started putting up points against App State, NC State, Stanford, Florida State. Like all these teams aren't very good.
Correct.
But I fell for it. I was like, man, they're getting fixed. They're getting right. And then all of a sudden you saw them versus a quality opponent, and they got exposed. So I think they could get exposed again today. Virginia Tech does have a couple injuries to keep an eye on. Their quarterback, Kyron Jones, and their back, Tootin in the backfield, both been banged up. Something to keep an eye on for Virginia Tech.
We love an analyst who takes ownership, don't we?
I fell for it.
Let's go ahead and get to the Big 12 now, where there are 3 big matchups featuring 3 teams who are on the playoff bubble right now. That's Colorado. They're taking on Texas Tech today. Number 9 BYU at Utah, and 17 Iowa State at Kansas. Let's go ahead and start with Colorado at Texas Tech today, where suddenly Colorado's path to the playoff is in sight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Iowa State losing last week, it just opened the door right up. Shadur Sanders has been playing phenomenal football all season. Could be the first quarterback taken off the board. We know what Travis Hunter is. We know what he's able to do. But when you look around this team, they are getting better. Shadur Sanders was sacked almost 5 times a game last year. He's at about 3.2 sacks a game. Defensively, they're much better. They were giving up close to 34 points a game. Right now, they're giving up 22 points a game. So all the chips are in their favor. They have the opportunity. They have the pieces to make it to the Big 12 playoff. Obviously, they're going to still need another loss from somewhere in the Big 12, probably Iowa State. But the biggest thing for them today is going to be limiting Taj Brook. I said it earlier, in the Kansas State game where they lost, they were just outmanned in the run game. DJ Giddens just tore them up, torched them all day long. Avery Johnson got in there too. They're going to have to limit this run game. If they do that, then I think that this will be a favorable matchup for Colorado.
Elsewhere in the Big 12, it's a rivalry game between BYU and Utah. Beanie, you know, anything can happen in rivalry games. You guys know that firsthand, especially when you're an underdog at home. But do you see the Cougars having any issues today?
No, I really don't. You know, when you look at Utah, obviously Cam rising up, not being there, then playing Isaac Wilson, a young freshman quarterback. 8 interceptions, 8 touchdowns. He's good, been decent at times. I just don't believe that they have enough for BYU. And it's not like BYU does anything unworldly. They're just a team that plays complementary football in every sense of the word. On the defensive side and offensive side, Jake Retzlaff, I think he takes care of the ball. He's able to make the right decisions when need be, and LJ Martin running it. So I don't think they have any issue. I love Kalani Sitake and what he did with his football team and how he has them playing.
All right, and we look forward to seeing if Iowa State, who is ranked at 17, face Kansas today, if they can regroup and bounce back after suffering a loss to Texas Tech last week. Much more to come here in college football pregame. We're just getting started here on CBS Sports HQ. When we return, just give him all the flowers. Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti deserves all of the praise for turning this Hoosiers program around, but he's not surprised. Just Google him. What did DJ Khaled say? All I do is win. Or that too. I did. We're back here on College Football Pregame, where we continue to praise the job that Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti has done as he's turned this program around, leading them to an undefeated 9-0 season. But not only is he a good coach, he may be a better interview. During his introductory press conference this past year, he was asked how he sells his vision to recruits. It's simple. Google him. He wins. And earlier this week, our own Danny Kanell asked him about that specific moment. Take a listen to this.
At the basketball game, you said Purdue sucks, and it was like, okay, that's a rivalry. But then you threw in there, you said Ohio State and Michigan do too. And then, of course, there's the Google me quote when it's like, hey, I'll ask you how you got to where you are. Those two quotes, which have kind of become sort of your signatures and your staples, what people have come to know, which one of those of yours are maybe your favorite or one that you're tired of hearing about?
I don't have a favorite. I mean, I own those because I did it. But to put it in context, first day on the job, you know, and I wasn't here 15 minutes, and I could sense the doom and gloom and the hopelessness. And then went up and spoke with Big Ten channel at noon up in Indy. Come back, team meeting, 7 or 8 guys not there. And, you know, I'd come from a place, we won 5 straight championships. I was used to winning. So it was like a clash of two worlds. And I wasn't going to lower my expectations or standards. All right, I wasn't going to let anybody do that to me. So I got out there in the basketball game. There's 17,000 people. I have to get them excited, number one. But I had to set an expectation level, too. And then 3 weeks later was the early signing date, and I was doing my press conference. And it was, you know, I didn't see the light of day in December because we had a lot of work to do. And my press conference at the very end, you know, I was asked the same question for about the 15th time. And, you know, I put my head down and decided to keep it simple, you know, instead of giving a 10-minute answer. And, you know, I said, I win. Google me.
I know those because I did. It was like my favorite. He has better one-liners than you. Who would have thought? Come on.
Well,
maybe he took a page out of your book. I don't know. How cool was that? He seems
was
like
great.
an awesome
Most
guy.
coaches like take you behind the scenes a little bit. When you do those interviews, they're in, they're out. They got to go to some meeting, and it's just kind of what you get used to. He actually stayed on our little Zoom call there for a minute, was asking about Coach Bowden, asked where my parents were from because they're from Pittsburgh. He's from Pittsburgh. Could not have been a nicer guy, more gracious with his time. I was already a fan. Now I'm even a bigger fan.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, well, so the iconic Google me quote got us thinking, who else should we Google? All right, so Beanie, you lead us off here.
You know what? There's a running back out there in Idaho, and you probably should Google him. His name is Ashton Genty. Google him. When you look at Ashton Genty, I mean, the guy only has more rushing yards than Ohio State as a team, Alabama as a team, Penn State as a team, Rutgers, Iowa State, Georgia Tech, and South Carolina as an entire team. Through 8 games, he's at 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns, average of 8 yards a carry. He's probably going to go on to break just about every record in college football when it comes to single-season rushing. Google that man and put him in New York.
Listen, does this even count? Like, are there actually people out there? It does not count. Are there actually people out there who have to Google this guy?
We gave Beanie a freebie. It's all right.
We gave him a freebie.
But for anybody who's listening and doesn't know who Ashton Genty is, Google that
Shame
man.
on you.
That man.
Shame on you.
Google that man.
All right, Damien, you're up next.
Yeah, so there is a stud defensive end edge rusher down in South Carolina. Google Dylan Stewart. This guy is a quarterback's worst nightmare. He's long, he's rangy, he's got incredible moves, he's got a great motor. I mean, he gets after the quarterback on every single play. You see him defeat double teams, triple teams. He's always chasing the ball, and quarterbacks who play against him are always looking over their shoulder trying to find him. So they can't look down the field and try to find their receivers, and they can't be focused on pushing the ball down the field because Dylan Stewart is their worst nightmare, and they're looking for him all game to stay away. Google that man. He will be one of the top picks whenever he's drafted.
Wow.
You know who doesn't want you to Google Dylan Stewart? Shane Beamer. Because the word is getting out, and they're going to have to pay up to keep him because that was a big piece this week. Said that price tag is going up for Dylan Stewart. I'm sure Shane Beamer would be more than happy to have his collectives pay for it, but it's getting more expensive.
But what does it say about Shane Beamer? Because he did choose South Carolina over big powerhouse schools like Georgia, Ohio State, Miami. Shane's
a great recruiter.
Yeah.
He's an unbelievable people person, and he's built a culture that his players buy into. That was a huge get for him.
Yeah. All right, Danny, you're up next. Who should we Google?
I'm a little upset because if you Google running back, Ashton Genty comes up first. Yeah. If you listen to our show, it's a name that Damien already mentioned earlier. But Google Taj Brooks for Texas Tech. 5th in the country in rushing, over 130 yards a game. He's somebody that no one knows about. He has a massive opportunity. And what's going to come up on the search after tonight? This is the running back that took Colorado out of the college football playoff race. I think playing in Lubbock with a quarterback, Baron Morton, who can also throw it through the air, they're going to try to keep the ball away from Shedeur and Travis Hunter on that offensive aerial attack. And the way they do that is to get Taj Brooks going. I think they come back after a huge win on the road against Iowa State. They elevate again, coming back home. I think they knock off the win, and it's a big reason because of Taj Brooks.
Yeah, he has a huge opportunity today, as you mentioned earlier as well, Damien, against Colorado. All right, more college football pregame when we return. We have to hit a quick break, but when we come back, overrated or underrated? Did the College Football Playoff Committee get the first college football playoff rankings right? We talk about it next, and we look at the at-large bids and if they got them right. That's next. Well, the first college football playoff rankings were released earlier this week, and we finally have a look at what a potential 12-team college football playoff bracket might look like come December. Oregon, Georgia, Miami, and BYU are your top 4 teams at the moment. Boise State is in there, as you see, representing the group of 5. You see the remaining rankings of the teams with at-large bids. But who is overrated and underrated in the latest playoff rankings? Let's get the answers from our crew back on set here. Mackenzie Brooks is back with us, and we will start with you, Ken's. Texas, ranked right now #5 in the country. Is this Longhorns team overrated or underrated in your opinion?
I think overall this is an underrated team, and I think a lot of it is being dinged from this Georgia loss, which I understand. And
Bite your tongue. Bite it.
I know. Listen,
it's only 9:40.
It's only literally not even 10 a.m. I understand why we have to put Oregon where they are. I do. But you look statistically, like, they have a better run differential. They have a better pass differential. They're allowing 11 points per game. Like, this team can be very dominant. And when you're looking at power rankings and looking at truly who is the best teams, you have to account for opponents and neutral site rankings. And, you know, having your best wins at home and almost losing to Boise State and having Will Howard beat Will Howard, and then you take the Ohio State win, that, to me, I just feel like Texas still has a lot to show. And I think we are slightly underrating them.
Oh, my goodness. All right, it's my time. All right. So their best win is Oklahoma. An Oklahoma team, which had benched their quarterback, was playing a guy making his second start. They had 5 wide receivers out of the game. I am not impressed with that one. And then you start looking at it. I know it's the SEC bump, and they're new to the SEC, so we have to give them credit for that schedule. But who else have they played? The Michigan win all of a sudden does not look as impressive. And then they looked awful against Georgia. I think that's the reality. I thought they looked overwhelmed, especially on the offensive line, which we thought was good because they were playing a bunch of cupcakes. Then they get exposed. I'm not buying back into them after they bounce back with a 3-point win against Vanderbilt. I still think they are overrated. And all these Texas fans, because I think Texas A&M is the better team. Texas A&M lost to South Carolina, and all these Texas fans are like, oh, see, you were wrong. Let's see what happens at Kyle Field on that last weekend of the season. I still think A&M's the better team in Texas.
Okay, I think I know your answer, but I was going to ask Kenzie, based on her answer, could the Longhorns maybe suffer another loss and still make the playoff with this #5 ranking?
Yes. Listen, I know you don't want to hear it, but you can get so many 2-loss SEC teams into this playoff based on if we have one ACC team, if we don't have a Notre Dame, if we have one Big 12 team. There are a million different versions of the story. They're like, let's just take another SEC. I'm not saying it's just.
Right.
But that's how the cookie crumbles here, okay?
Just how it goes. Just how it goes. All right, let's get to Penn State here. Penn State, they sit at 6 with 1 loss to rival your Ohio State Buckeyes. What do you think about their ranking, overrated or underrated?
You know, I necessarily didn't want to say that they were overrated, so if I had to go anything, I'll have to say underrated, because I think they're just about
Beanie's like making his own show over here. What is going on?
I think they're just about on par where they need to be. When you look at who they lost to, the #4 team in the country, and how they lost, it wasn't a disastrous blowout. I think that was a tight ball game where it could have went either way, give or take a couple of plays. I still like Penn State's chances. Obviously, when you look at Drew Aller, the question mark is, can he go out and beat a team? I don't think he's proven that just yet, but the other pieces that they have in Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, Tyler Warren, I think they allow for them to be a very good, diverse team on the offensive end. Abdul Carter on the edge on the defensive side, I think they're still very good, and everything's still right in front of this team. So, if anything, I'll go underrated.
Wait, so you just said that Drew Aller has not proven that he can win the big game.
Right.
Has James Franklin proved that?
No, not yet.
Okay. No. I gave you your time. I gave you your time. Hold on a second. I'm just going off of what you said. All right. This is the same old James Franklin Nittany Lions that we see every single year. Yes, it was a close game against Ohio State, but Ohio State did not play that great. Will Howard turning the ball over, going in the end zone. Like, they did not play that well. This is the same old Penn State team that we see every single year. Drew Aller is not that good. James Franklin cannot win the big games. Like, what about them makes them...
He can't win the big game versus Ohio State and Michigan. Outside of that, I think he does win big games.
Those are the only
Which one? Those are the big games for James Franklin and Penn State. Those are the big games. So I have to say, mic drop. Yeah. I have to say that this team is overrated. Again, we have seen Penn State at their best, and their best is not good enough. They don't have the weapons. I know you just listed a bunch of guys. Where have they been all season? Nick Singleton has all of a sudden disappeared.
He's been injured.
These wide receivers, are not making plays. If it's not Tyler Warren, it's nobody. You cannot be a playoff caliber team. You cannot compete with the Miamis, with the Georgias, with the Ohio States. Clearly, you cannot compete with these teams when you lack talent and explosiveness in your offense. And you have a quarterback that doesn't deliver in the big moments, and you're coached by a guy who, somebody tell me his record against top 5 opponents. Or
1-13?
Exactly. 1-13. So How can this team not be overrated? How?
I think it's a year-by-year basis. And then I do believe when you look at the other teams that are in the top 12, I think when you compare them, I think Penn State are better than some of those teams. If you line up Penn State versus Miami, I think that'd be a heck of a football game because I don't think Miami on the defensive side will be able to do anything.
We might have to go to break.
What did you have in your coffee this morning?
Who has Miami played to where you can sit there and say, you know what, they played a quality opponent and then they just went out and dominated him? Every football game for Miami has been a very close matchup and down to the wire. It wasn't until like the fourth quarter to where they stretched it out.
But they're putting up close to 40 points a game. Can Penn State compete with that?
I think so. I really do think so.
I do think that defense could stop Miami from putting up.
Absolutely.
Okay, now on CBS Sports HQ this morning.
We have.
Lost our minds.
All right. Listen. Hey, I got your back. You know I always got your back. Bama, overrated or underrated? They sit at 11th ranked right now in the college football playoff.
Wait a minute.
I know.
How did we do this?
Because I know you're just not going to get upset with me.
You don't like me ruffling feathers.
No.
Alabama is underrated, and here's why. They suffered 2 early losses to Tennessee and Vandy, but then you look at them last week against Missouri. Missouri wasn't the best team in the country, but they had a point to prove. They put up a goose egg. They put their starters back in at the end of the game to make sure that they preserved that goose egg, and now they're going to build. So I think that everybody's looking at Vandy, looking at Tennessee, and thinking, oh, this isn't the same Alabama. I agree. It's not the same Alabama standard, but this is an underrated team. They've got guys like Jalen Milroe. They've got guys like Ryan Williams. This defense is going to play better. They're going to finish out the season stronger.
We're going to find out how overrated they are tonight in Baton Rouge. Jalen Milroe, the last 4 games, hasn't rushed over 50 yards. He's got 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and I am not convinced after beating a bad Missouri team. Who was it? Drew Pine was playing quarterback for them. They
like I said, not the best team, but they had a point to prove, and they went out and proved it.
2 claps for them.
Yeah, we like it. All right, listen here. Enough arguing. Let's wake some money, shall we? More from us when we return here on College Football Pregame on CBS Sports HQ. We're entering, I believe, the Kenzie's Corner to this one with 3-0 this week. Stick around if you want to win some money. college football pregame. We don't like talking about records, but we have to when you're 3-0, right, Ken?
Right. A little 3-0 moment for your girl. Let me hear it from the studio.
Let's do it. Win some money today.
It's going back to DK's corner next week. I'm making that bold prediction. All right. Best play of the weekend. What are you going with?
I'm going with Texas team total over 34.5. I had a lot of success with this early in the year. Sometimes when they're blowing out teams, they put in Arch Manning, and that guy is not taking his foot off the gas by any means. So again, a lot of possessions for this team. I don't think Florida's offense can really stay on the field. All
right, I'm going rivalry game. Now, you know me, Kent. I have been back in BYU saying they're underrated, disrespected all season long. They've had some close games, but 3.5 points is too many. I actually hope they win, but I don't think it's by much. I'm going to take Utah, the home dog. Brandon Rose may be playing some quarterback for Kyle Whittingham. He's been coy, saying maybe he benches Isaac Wilson. I'm going to say they cover Rice Eccles, playing at home, rivalry game. Give me the home underdog.
I like that. I'd go a little money line sprinkle on Utah.
Yeah, I like the way you're thinking.
All right. Sounds good to us. Much more from us here on College Football Pregame when we return. Countdown to kickoff continues. A ton at stake today in terms of the college football playoff, but also in the Heisman Trophy race. We break down this four-man race and who can separate themselves this weekend next.
get to some fresh HQ headlines. We start with the Saints, who are expected to place wide receiver Chris Olave on the IR. That is per multiple reports this morning. Olave suffered his 4th documented concussion since entering the NFL in last week's loss to the Panthers. He'll miss a minimum of 4 games and will continue to meet with specialists to assess his eventual return to action. A plane carrying the Auburn men's basketball team was grounded shortly after takeoff yesterday after a scuffle among Tigers players. Our Matt Norlander reports. It's unknown which players were involved. A new flight eventually took off for Houston. The 11th-ranked Tigers will play number 4 Houston later tonight. Elsewhere, number 1 Kansas took down number 9 North Carolina 92-89 last night in a thriller at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. South Dakota State transfer Zeke Mayo led the way for the Jayhawks with a game-high 21 points. The victory gave Kansas coach Bill Self his 590th career win with the Jayhawks. That ties Fog Allen for the most in program history. Star Japanese pitcher Roki Sasaki is in the process of being posted to Major League Baseball in 2025. Considered one of the most talented pitchers in the world, Sasaki will only be eligible to sign a minor league contract because he's just 23 years old. When he is officially posted, he'll have 45 days to sign with a major league team. And in the NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 10-0 after defeating the Warriors 136-117 last night. Darius Garland had 27 points. Evan Mobley chipped in with 23 for the Cavs, who were the first team to win their first 10 games since the 15-16 Warriors.
Welcome back to College Football Pregame, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Jordan Giorgio, Damien Harris, Mackenzie Brooks, Danny Kanell, and Beanie Wells with you as we continue to get you all the way up to kickoffs for a huge Week 11 of the college football season. Huge weekend for the college football playoff race, as we've mentioned, but also the Heisman Trophy race. We enter a pivotal Week 11 of the season, and it's a 4-man race, you guys, for the Heisman Trophy between Miami's quarterback Cam Ward and Colorado's 2-way star Travis Hunter. You know, Beanie, this is an award that's given to the most outstanding college football player, and Travis Hunter's excellence on both sides of the ball continues to grab the attention of both voters and fans alike.
You know, it really does. It really does. Obviously, I think he's great. I think he's phenomenal in what he does on both sides of the ball. But when you really break down his numbers at the receiver position and then at the DB position, I don't know necessarily that they're like Heisman-esque numbers. You know, when you look at the only predominantly defensive guy that won the Heisman, that was Charles Woodson. His numbers were crazy on both sides of the ball, and the impact that he had was insane. And I think he has a similar impact. I just don't think his numbers match up.
Well, Hunter is on the heels, though, of Miami's quarterback Cam Ward, who continues to put up impressive performances each and every week, Danny, leading this Miami team to an undefeated 9-0 record.
He is a human highlight reel. I absolutely love the way he plays, poised in the pocket, leads the country with 29 touchdown passes. He's also orchestrating the #1 scoring offense in the country, who I think, like Beanie said, I think he'd be able to put points up against Penn State or anybody in the country. But he is the reason why the Miami Hurricanes are back on the college football scene. That is a huge part of this storyline, too. I think he's an incredible player out there for Miami.
Well, how about another quarterback firmly in the mix? It's Oregon's Dillon Gabriel, but with only 3 games left, Gabriel must elevate his performance, Danny, to maintain his candidacy despite leading the #1 team in the nation. But they're showing no signs of slowing down.
There's the formula. #1 team in the country, a quarterback, and you're undefeated. That's basically what he's done. There haven't been too many Heisman moments. He did have some big throws against Ohio State. Their schedule hasn't been tough. I think what it boils down to Dillon Gabriel in the Big Ten championship game, which probably is going to be a rematch with Ohio State. If he does that again and has another big performance, that's his key to winning the Heisman Trophy. But he's been spectacular, second all-time passing touchdowns and yards.
Damien, the other non-quarterback in this race is Boise State's Ashton Jeanty. He continues to make history and chase records, but there are some major milestones he has to hit if he wants to walk away with the Heisman in New York.
And it's unfair because he played so well at the beginning of the season. He put up such crazy numbers that now that's the floor for him. We expect him to rush for 200 yards and 6 touchdowns to continue to elevate him in the Heisman conversation. But when you watch this kid and what he brings to the table, I mean, obviously his numbers speak for themselves, but he's tough. He's dependable. I mean, all season he has put Boise State on his shoulders, and he is the reason why they're even in this playoff conversation. He has completely elevated this program, the standard, the expectation, and it is because of the way he has led this team. Even going down with an injury at one point and then just popping back up, going right in the game and finishing the game off strong. Obviously, it's going to take a lot for him to climb back up in the Heisman rankings, but if he just continues to finish the season strong, continue to put up the performances like we've seen from him, win a conference championship, get to the college football playoff, I mean, obviously he's going to need some help, but he's still going to have a ticket to New York City.
Well, it's college football. Anything can happen.
Anything
so we'll see.
happen.
You just saw the odds to win the current odds to win the Heisman Trophy. But Mackenzie, who does Sportsline right now have walking away with the trophy?
So we've been in the lab all week, you know, reverse engineering the numbers, trying to understand why the odds makers have priced everyone where they are. And you look at Hunter, it's a direct correlation of just process of elimination. It's Ward fumbling the bag, not winning out against these non-ranked teams. It's Gabriel maybe not winning out or winning the Big Ten either. Genty, I mean, they have 9 guys in the box just trying to stop him. Teams aren't even trying to win against Boise State anymore.
They're trying to keep him from breaking records.
So in turn, now the quarterback's using the receivers and he's just not getting the numbers he needs. He has a historical precedent working against him in Barry Sanders. Travis Hunter doesn't have to deal with that. So that's why I think Hunter, his odds are just a correlation of the process of elimination of the rest of the guys falling. So I think that's the most likely possibility. So I'd go Hunter here.
You know, you heard Damien Beanie say it's just unfair. You on the same page?
Yeah, I do think it's unfair for Genty. But when you look at the numbers of the last 3 running backs to win the Heisman Trophy, he's right on par.
Exactly.
You look at Derrick Henry, Reggie Bush, and Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram won it with 1,600 yards. Right now, Genty's at 1,520 touchdowns, averaging 8-yard carries with 4 games left to go. So he's on pace.
He is.
Well, each week of the college football season brings us new twists with the Heisman Trophy race, but also the college football playoff race. So let's go through some of these scenarios and some of these teams' path to the 12-team playoff. You're going to take us to Mackenzie's map to the college football playoff. Lay out the map. We'll start with Colorado to make the playoff, Ken.
So things got a lot better for Colorado after last week, and they sat back and watched some Big 12 teams just take L after L, which was huge for them. So really now, it's about winning out. Obviously, you have to win out. That's your best chance here. But now, since Kansas State really eliminated themselves from the race, now they need to see Iowa State go down. So they need Kansas State at the end of the year to beat Iowa State, hand Iowa State another conference loss, and that's when we'll see a BYU versus Colorado Big 12 title. And then if you got that momentum by them winning out, I think you can win that conference championship there for Colorado. So it's just a lot more optimistic than what we were going to say last Saturday.
That's it. That's all they need is Kansas State. They went out, obviously. That's it.
They went out. They need Kansas State to beat Iowa State. They need Iowa State to not be eligible to make this conference championship. Or they could have BYU crumble too. I mean, I'm just saying that's the most likely path.
Right.
If you're looking for the least factors and the most that you can control yourself.
Okay, let's get to the group of 5 now. Boise State, what is their scenario?
So obviously they can get in just in general by winning out, winning the Mountain West. Now if they want to potentially grab that 4 seed and take themselves up the ranking, maybe have that bye, they want the Big 12 to crumble. If we see a Big 12 champion that's just not that sexy, like they're not this undefeated dominating team, I don't think they necessarily feel like they have to be in that bye week in that 4 seed. So you want to prey on the Big 12's downfall if you're Boise State to maybe get that 4 seed bye week, which is crazy to say now.
Do you see that
I agree,
happening?
and especially it'd be interesting if Colorado, if that path we just talked about.
See, that's a sexy team that they don't
Which shouldn't come into play, but it absolutely does because they are worried about matchups and they want to see good stuff on TV as well. But I think Boise State should be in the mix for that conversation because of the Big 12. I think you're going to see some chaos here last month of the season.
All right, what about in the SEC? Another team that's firmly on the playoff bubble is Alabama. What is their path to the playoff?
So the best situation, obviously, is win out. Now, in the SEC, and odds makers imply the same thing, we are likely going to see 4 teams. So you're really hoping to be above that 5th-team line, staying above water here. So your best chance, stay in that 3, stay in that 4. You want to see Texas A&M go down as well. You're hoping for a lot of things to, go your way, especially you're looking down there. Texas needs to beat Texas A&M, so we take Texas A&M out of this top 4 situation. Keep the losses in the family with the Texas, with the Georgia, with the Bama. You win out, you defeat LSU is the first step to doing that, and you have over a coin flip chance, a 58% chance to make the playoff.
All right, you see that, 58% chance. Smiling.
People like it.
Smiles right next to me. Listen, if they don't get it done tonight, big game in Death Valley. This obviously puts a big mark on the DeBoer era. What conversation is going to be had in the offseason in Tuscaloosa?
Wow. I don't want to jump the gun and say that people are going to be calling for DeBoer's job or they need to make these existential crisis type changes. But there's going to be a lot of questions about how they can get back to the Alabama standard, how they can get back to the old way of sorts. Because again, missing out on not just a 4-team playoff, missing out on a 12-team playoff, like Alabama fans would have never ever expected this. So if they lose tonight and they don't make the playoffs, then those tough questions just start to be asked. I don't want to say that it's going to be calling for Kalen DeBoer's job because I don't want to be the one that has that quote beside my name, but there will be some tough questions asked, and it's all going to be revolved around getting back to the Alabama standard in the old way.
All right, you guys, let's hit an injury report. We turn things over to our own Jeremy St. Louis for the very latest. Jeremy.
Thank you very much, guys. Yes, we're starting with Florida quarterback DJ Lagway, who is listed as questionable versus 5th-ranked Texas with a hamstring injury. Our Matt Zennett reports Lagway wants to play, but again, Aiden Warner is more likely to get the start for the Gators. Running back Montrell Jordan Johnson is also trending towards missing the game. Army standout quarterback Bryson Daly will return for today's game at North Texas. That's according to ESPN. Daly was a late scratch last week with an undisclosed injury. He is tied for 2nd in the nation with 19 rushing touchdowns. In Piscataway, Rutgers will be without star running back Kyle Monangai today against Minnesota. That's per multiple reports. He suffered an undisclosed injury in the team's most recent loss to USC on October the 25th. Monangai ranks 2nd in the Big Ten with 931 rushing yards this season, adding 10 touchdowns. The Big Ten game of the week on CBS this afternoon has number 8 Indiana hosting defending champions Michigan. And some news this morning for the Hoosiers. Per 24/7 Sports, Indiana is fully in the process of negotiations of a contract extension with head coach Curt Cignetti. We'll have Jeff Rabjohns on later to discuss that ahead of today's game at 3:30 Eastern on CBS and Paramount Plus. And the Florida Gators are taking on the Texas Longhorns, number 5 Texas Longhorns today. Set to be a big game for both of these teams. Obviously, Texas only had a three-point win over in their last game. They are looking to bounce back. Today, we're going to talk about that and the status of DJ Lagway next. Welcome back to College Football Pregame here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Florida and Texas set to meet for the 4th time in their respective histories, and for the first time since 1940. Quinn Ewers and company hosting the 4-4 Gators in Austin, and they are looking to bounce back after losing their last home game to Georgia. That game precipitated a nervy 3-point win at Vanderbilt prior to their bye week last week. There is some concern that Steve Sarkisian's offense is stalled, averaging just 28 points in their past 4 games for Florida. They, of course, have questions around the health of quarterback DJ Lagway, and that's where we're going to start here as we welcome in Chip Brown, who is, of course, at the game for us today, our Longhorns reporter for 24/7 Sports. Chip, give us a quick update on the status of DJ Lagway. Have you heard anything in terms of his status at this point?
Yeah, nothing new on DJ Lagway. So we're waiting to see the players come out and go through warm-ups to see what he looks like. Because as of right now, still saying, questionable. So it could be a game-time decision for DJ Lagway.
And if he can't go, of course, Aiden Warner will be the one to go, who had 66 yards and an interception last week against Georgia. All right, let's talk about this Texas side of things. You mentioned, or I mentioned there's perhaps a little bit of concern with this offense maybe falling off a bit. They had the loss to Georgia in their last home outing, and then the nervy win over Vanderbilt. How does this Texas team coming off the bye week get back into rhythm here and prevent Florida from playing spoiler?
Yeah, I mean, it's time. This offense has not operated the way it's supposed to operate really since game 2 against Michigan. And here we are in game 9. So by all accounts, Quinn Ewers has gotten over the oblique injury. What they have to do, though, is clean up the penalties that have bogged down this offense, in addition to Quinn Ewers' turnovers. Last game against Vanderbilt, 10 penalties for over 100 yards, most of those on the offense. That's been a steady theme this year. Even against Michigan, when they looked good, they had 7 offensive penalties. So that's got to get cleaned up, or this is going to turn into a situation where this defense is playing championship defense, but the offense is letting down the Longhorns. So today, kind of a defining day for Texas in terms of getting on track and building momentum as they head toward the end of the season. Everything's set up for them in terms of the college football playoff rankings.
Chip, as in terms of the Lagway conversation with Florida, obviously he presents a different athletic challenge for this Texas defense. How will they adjust, or do you expect them to adjust if it is Warner versus Lagway in this game today?
Well, Texas has done really well against mobile quarterbacks. Diego Pavia did not really hurt Texas with his legs. He did have an 18-yard touchdown run, but Texas actually had defensive leverage on that play and gave it up. So, Texas is loaded at the defensive end position, whether they're collapsing the pocket by simply pushing offensive linemen back into the quarterback, or setting an edge to contain a running quarterback. I think the Texas defense is built for that.
And they are, of course, big favorites today. Chip Brown covering all things Longhorns for us for 24/7 Sports, getting us ready for Florida's visit to Austin today. Thanks very much, Chip. Appreciate you. No matter what happens in that game, we know that Florida head coach Billy Napier's job is safe. AD Scott Strickland announcing this week that stressing that need for a disciplined, stable approach and asking fans to get behind Napier as he looks to build a championship program in Gainesville. All right, well, one head coach we know has the full backing of the fan base and more is Deion Sanders. Sanders and his 20th-ranked Buffs go to Texas Tech this afternoon, chasing a 7th win this season and a 5-1 mark in Big 12 play. They already have more wins this season than the past 2 seasons combined, and that means lots of hope that this is a team that can make it into the 12-team playoff. Let's discuss that with 24/7 Colorado reporter Adam Munstertiger, who joins us. Adam, in terms of this brand of football, what Colorado brings to college football, we've seen the impact that Sanders has had in Boulder and around the nation from a marketing perspective. Given how important this first expanded playoff will be, do you think the committee will want to have Deion and the Buffs in the playoff, even if they don't win the Big 12?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting kind of how this conference shakes out, because obviously BYU is in the driver's seat of this conference right now. But if Colorado wins 10 games, how do you keep them out of the college football playoff because of what Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, has done it just in terms of drawing more eyeballs. You know, a lot of folks that are big Colorado fans now weren't big college football fans before, and so it's drawn a lot of eyes to the sport. And so being able to get Colorado into the college football playoff would obviously be great for ratings and just for the sport in general. And you know, they are, like you mentioned, you know, having unprecedented success right now. This is only the third time in the last 2 decades that Colorado has entered into the month of November bowl eligible. And you look at their schedule, they're probably going to be favored in each of these final 4 games. Coming off the bye week, they obviously need to get back to the consistency they showed right before that bye week. But, you know, things are trending very, very positively for Colorado right now.
Well, and you look at, as you mentioned, that schedule. I mean, after this game, you could argue this is their last really challenging game. 3 of the 4 lowest ranked teams in the Big 12 remain on the schedule after today. So it looks like smooth sailing for the Buffs in terms of making their way, inching their way up into the playoff. Adam, the name we're all talking about from this Colorado team is Travis Hunter, the clubhouse co-leader for the Heisman Trophy. How could he bolster his resume today?
Well, he just is doing something we haven't seen a college football player do in this modern era for, you know, a very, very long time. He's playing over 120 snaps per game, and it looked like his Heisman chances had taken a big hit when he got hurt against Kansas State. Didn't play in the second half of that game, and then just was not himself the next week down at Arizona. But we saw Travis Hunter get back to Heisman form last week against Cincinnati. He has, it seems like, gotten over that shoulder issue and back to playing full-time both ways. And again, it's just it's pretty incredible what he's able to accomplish being a top 5 player at both receiver and cornerback.
Adam, what would it mean to this program, to the school, if he was to win the Heisman Trophy?
You know, this is a program that's won 1 national championship, has 1 Heisman Trophy candidate. And right now, yeah, a national championship's probably far-fetched at this point. But to be able to, you know, have a second Heisman would be huge for this program that has seen a lot of dark times in the last 2 decades. And so there's a new excitement around Boulder that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Our Colorado reporter, Adam Munster-Tiger, joining us from Lubbock as the Buffs take on the Red Raiders at 4 p.m. Eastern time today. Arguably the toughest game left on their schedule as they look to inch their way up into the college football playoff. Of course, Miami Hurricanes take their undefeated record against Georgia Tech today. And, of course, another Heisman candidate, Cam Ward, leading the Hurricanes. We'll talk about that and more coming up on the College Football Pregame Show here on HQ. Let's get to some fresh HQ headlines. We start with the Saints, who are expected to place wide receiver Chris Olave on the IR. That is per multiple reports this morning. Olave suffered his 4th documented concussion since entering the NFL in last week's loss to the Panthers. He'll miss a minimum of 4 games and will continue to meet with specialists to assess his eventual return to action. A plane carrying the Auburn men's basketball team was grounded shortly after takeoff yesterday after a scuffle among Tigers players. Our Matt Norlander reports. It's unknown which players were involved. A new flight eventually took off for Houston. The 11th-ranked Tigers will play number 4 Houston later tonight. Elsewhere, number 1 Kansas took down number 9 North Carolina 92-89 last night in a thriller at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. South Dakota State transfer Zeke Mayo led the way for the Jayhawks with a game-high 21 points. The victory gave Kansas coach Bill Self his 590th career win with the Jayhawks. That ties Fog Allen for the most in program history. Star Japanese pitcher Roki Sasaki is in the process of being posted to Major League Baseball in 2025. Considered one of the most talented pitchers in the world, Sasaki will only be eligible to sign a minor league contract because he's just 23 years old. When he is officially posted, he'll have 45 days to sign with a major league team. And in the NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 10-0 after defeating the Warriors 136-117 last night. Darius Garland had 27 points. Evan Mobley chipped in with 23 for the Cavs, who were the first team to win their first 10 games since the 15-16 Warriors.
Welcome back to College Football Pregame here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. We are continuing to monitor the status of Florida quarterback DJ Lagway, who is listed as questionable versus 5th-ranked Texas, dealing with a bit of a hamstring injury. Our own Matt Zenitz reports that Lagway wants to play, but Aiden Warner is more likely to get the start for the Gators as they are out in Austin today. Just your initial thoughts on that, Dan.
I think this is all for show. I don't think DJ Lagway plays today. And if I'm Billy Napier, I don't know if I play him today. It's a game on the road where you're a 3-touchdown underdog against a team that's probably going to overwhelm you no matter who plays. And we just saw the letter of support from Scott Strickland, the athletic director for Billy Napier. They're preparing themselves for a bumpy ride over these last 4 games of the season. So why risk DJ bringing him back too early on the road when you've got 2 games at home coming up against Ole Miss and LSU, which would really make your season? Like, if you win one of those, all of a sudden the whole complexion of the program turns around. You have some optimism going into the following season. I don't think it's worth the risk to rush DJ Lagway back on the road against Texas. Let him get healthy for another week. Play him versus one of those games at home that you can maybe win.
All right, well, we will continue to keep you posted on his status as we're taking you all the way up to kickoff at in Austin. All right, so if Lagway cannot play, as I mentioned, we'll see Aiden Warner. He was 7 of 22 passing against Georgia last week after Lagway was injured. How much can Texas take advantage of this today?
I mean, Texas can certainly take advantage of that. I mean, obviously a guy that's not making good decisions with the football, not used to being out there, can't really move around the pocket as much as DJ Lagway could. Texas could really pin their ears back in this football game. But if you're Florida, you're going to have to be focused on the defensive side of the ball. Yes. That's where you're going to have an opportunity. When we watched them play versus Georgia, that's where they had the advantage. Forcing Carson Beck to look erratic in the pocket and make those crazy throws. If they can do the same thing here versus Texas, I think they'll have an opportunity. It's not going to be because of their offensive play at all.
And if they don't and they let Texas run up the score, do you know how much pressure that's going to be on this young quarterback? Yeah. Because then it's just like, we got to win. So then he's going to be looking to hit the big play. He might play outside of his comfort zone. He might start trying to force some things. So it's really, like to Beanie's point, it's really going to be on this Florida defense to keep the game in check. That way this young quarterback doesn't feel like, I've got to be Superman. I've got to go out and be the hero. He could just play his game and find his rhythm within the offense and just try to, you know, keep making positive plays down after down.
You know what you do if you have Aiden Warner, which I think is what is going to be playing quarterback? You start the game in the 4-minute drill. Like you, and the 4-minute drill is when you are at the end of the game and you have the lead and you're trying to milk the clock. Right. Slow down the game. Tell Aiden Warner, snap the ball with 3 or 4 seconds on the play clock. Use as much of the clock, and it doesn't matter if you're having any success. Run some wildcat, run the football, try to slow the game down and keep it away from Texas. Try to make it ugly and keep it close. That's a moral victory for the Gators if they can do that. I don't think there's any chance they win with them. Just try to make it respectable and get out of there there and get ready for next week.
All right, so we will see how this plays out as we continue to keep you posted here on College Football Pregame. You know, guys, it's crazy to think that we just have a few weeks left in the regular season. You know, crazy to see that so many teams in the preseason that were so hyped up failing to maybe meet expectations. So many teams also over exceeding their expectations. One team, though, that maybe has disappointed a little bit, especially some alumni, is your Alabama Crimson Tide.
Oh my goodness.
You know, what is the vibe check? Like, what is going on in the Bama Boys group chat right now?
Should we call somebody, find out?
Let's do it.
Should we call somebody about that? I can tell you the vibes are a little unsettled because everybody wants to see Alabama take the next step. But hold on. Let me call my guy. Hold on. Alabama legend.
What?
Alabama legend.
Got for us. He got for us.
Hold on.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, hey, y'all.
Drake, what up, my boy? We got Kenyon Drake, a.k.a. the Road Runner in the house. Kenyon Drake, how we doing this morning, brother? I know it's early out in Vegas, but how you doing?
I'm good, D-man. How y'all doing, man?
We are blessed, man. It's great to see your face, man. It's been a long time since we chopped it up. How are you enjoying retirement? I know you had such a great career, obviously at Alabama and then in the league. You know, you got the Miami Miracle. How are you just enjoying looking back at your career and reflecting on all the great times?
Man, I'm enjoying doing absolutely nothing. As you can imagine,
earned the right.
We've been, it's been a long road. Obviously, the long days and early starts we had. So, 7:30 getting up here talking to y'all, this ain't nothing compared to 6 a.m.
Right.
110s with, Coach Cochran and everything. But other than that, I've definitely enjoyed every moment. And, now I get to come on here and talk to ball with y'all, man. It's like full circle.
Yeah, so before we get to the Alabama-LSU game, I want to ask, because you had so many dynamic plays in your career, what is the most memorable play from Kenyon Drake's career?
People may not think that this play would be one of the top plays on my favorite play, but if you remember, I don't know if you were there. No, this is my junior year. You came my senior year, but we played Florida at home. First play of the game, Florida goes 3 and out. Kiffin calls a slat and go for me, lined up out wide, saw a matchup that he liked. Blake Sam gave me the sluggo signal, and got a 85-yard first play of the game, slant and go out wide. That really showed my versatility, kind of springboard me kind of with the rest of my career at Bama. So that was probably my favorite play that I personally love. But of course, I think the fans' favorite play probably my championship touchdown that I had, which
there goes Kenyon Drake. He can fly. He can fly.
Kenyon, I'm curious to know, because I sit here with Damien, we watch college football, we watch a lot of Bama games together, and I see him getting emotional, rooting for his squad, and I do see some frustration out of our boy here with the difference. Like, it's not the same as it was, or doesn't feel like it was with Nick Saban under Kalen DeBoer. When you see the new regime and you see the new players and you see a new mindset, what do you see from this Crimson Tide team?
What I see is a team that fights. I mean, they aren't out any games. I think that the landscape of college football today, there isn't really much difference between the top team and maybe the top 20 team, to be completely honest. I think that's a great thing for college football. Now, it's not such a great thing for, former, Crimson Tide as myself, where I want to see them go out there and blow everybody out. But it's a great game in and game out. And I think for them to continue to have success, they have to really, not be so reliant on the big play, which I love. But at the same time, they have to really play complementary football, establish a great running game. If it's cloudy, keep focusing on Milroe or either one of those workhorse running backs in the backfield, and then let the defense go out there and not have to see it 3 and out and be like, man, we got to come back on the field and make another stop, and then obviously get the special teams game and make some big plays in that facet, because as Damien remembers, our big wins were off of special teams plays as well. We just played a 3 facet game, so if they can continue to play complementary football, I think they'll have success the rest of the season.
One last question, because we got somebody else calling, but I want to ask you, paint a picture for the fans, the people at the desk here. What is the environment going to be like tonight in Death Valley? We got Alabama versus LSU, a night game in Baton Rouge. Tell people what to expect from these fans and from this environment tonight.
Man, it's going to be no love lost, man, at all. Especially night game, Death Valley. It's going to be like if you remember driving up that one-lane road or that two-lane road going up to the stadium, literally everybody and their grandmother is flicking you off when you go up there. You get in, they're playing neck the whole time from the student section. The chants, can't repeat everything they say, but as long as they go out there and, man, like I said, play a clean game, a multifaceted game, and a balanced game where everybody is kind of on the same page, man, I think they can go in there and get the win.
Kenyon, thanks so much for joining us. Awesome. This was awesome. You don't have to do that drive today. Enjoy it from the comfort of your own home. I heard someone else. Were you dialing someone over there?
I was. That was nice and cute, but let me get a Hall of Famer on the line.
Oh, okay.
Let's get a Hall of Famer. Let me see.
Who we have in Yeah, let's see.
Let's see if he's picking up here.
Who's calling?
Oh, look at this.
Tailgate.
Live from Columbus.
Tailgate night.
We got
Columbus, Ohio, we tailgating.
College Football Hall of Famer, two-time All-American Michael Dawson. Mike, how you doing?
3-time, baby.
3-time. Sorry.
3-time.
Mike, how's it going, man?
Tailgating.
Appreciate you having us.
It's going great. You see the horse, too?
Yeah, right. I appreciate you coming on. But we got to ask you, what's your thought of the state of the Buckeyes right now? Obviously, getting back on track versus the victory at Penn State, the secondary playing a lot better. Give us your thoughts and your details on Ohio State.
Well, I just love the fact that they were gritty last week. They imposed their will. Penn State, they had the momentum, and then we just shut it down there in the fourth quarter. We were able to impose our will as a defense and shut them out. And then our offense ran 11 straight run plays to let them know that we're going to end this game. Most, people know the 4-minute drill. Ours was about 6.5 minutes. We ran the clock out, and Penn State never stole the ball again. So, that's some good momentum leading into Purdue. We got I say a soft next 2 weeks, but we know when Indiana comes in here on the 23rd, that's going to be a big game for us.
Mike, we talk each and every week about a lot of the stars on this Ohio State Buckeyes team, Jeremiah Smith being one of them, your defensive guy. What would it be like to scheme up for a guy like Jeremiah Smith nowadays?
Man, I mean, I'm gonna get the bright light on me on this. Man, Jeremiah Smith is a talented young man. He's physically, he comes in at 18 years old looking like a grown man. And as we would know, we would have a 2-over-1, right? We would try to do a 2-over-1 on him at all times. He's already broken a lot of freshman records. I think his career is, sky's the limit for his potential here in Columbus. And I just hope that, we can keep him for at least 2 more years. I know the rules say he has to wait until the end of the junior year, but the way that he's playing, his sophomore year, he may have to debate and start pushing the NFL to say, I'm ready for you guys.
Mike, I want to ask you, because we lent you one of our former Alabama guys and Caleb Down. Special player. Can you talk about what he's meant to this defense and what he brings as a player?
Yes, Caleb has been an exceptional leader since his arrival here in Columbus. I was a part of the final 2 schools in the recruiting process to sit down with him. And obviously he made the decision to go to Alabama because of Nick Saban. But when Nick Saban decided to retire, he opened up his recruitment, and, he's here in Columbus, and he's been a great leader in that secondary, and he's holding a lot of players accountable. That's what's the difference, kind of reminds me of myself. And then he's a guy that is not afraid to go put his nose in there and make a play. He has the ability, very talented, that, anytime he touches the guy, if it's a heel click or a powerful tackle, that guy's going down. And he just continues to carry on a tradition of great DB play here in Columbus, Ohio.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us here in College Football Pregame. You go enjoy the tailgate. Stay warm out there. We'll keep Beanie in check. Much more from us here on College Football Pregame. When we come back, Michigan is preparing to face unbeaten Indiana today and are underdogs against the Hoosiers for the first time since 1968. But could they finally be getting star cornerback Will Johnson back? We'll tell you next.
Hoosiers keep their undefeated season and playoff hopes alive when they host defending champs Michigan. Today on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
College football pregame here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Make every moment more. Michigan cornerback Will Johnson out for the Wolverines as they head to number 8 Indiana on Saturday. Johnson did not even travel with the team to Bloomington. He has had an injury-riddled season, hasn't played since leaving their October 19th game with a toe injury. He is a projected first-round pick in next year's NFL draft. He's got 14 total tackles, 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups in 6 games. Let's get more on this from our Michigan insider for 24/7 Sports, Sam Webb. Sam, head coach Sharon Moore says, look, Johnson would go out there in a second. He is committed to returning at some point this season, but there is some question as to the severity of Johnson's injury. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it was a pretty severe injury, to say the least, but it was not one, from the time I heard about it, it was not one that they expected to knock him out for the season, but it was one that I heard from jump that they expected to keep him out until after the bye week. I think it's something that he's been testing and that he was pushing to try to maybe come back early from. I think he tested it to try to come back this week, but the initial projection was always that he would use the bye week for an extra week of rest and try to get back, or would get back for that Northwestern game, and obviously use that Northwestern game as a tune-up to get back for Ohio State.
Well, they would certainly love to have him today as they go to Bloomington to face undefeated Indiana. When you take a look at how this Michigan team stacks up against Indiana going into this game as underdogs for the very first time facing the Hoosiers, what kind of a game are you expecting to see today? What do you expect from this Michigan offense?
Oh, yeah, that's what it's all about. See, I think you start with, I think, defensively, they should be able to come in and their defensive line really give this team a chance. Like, you know, you talk about Indiana's offense, they're high power, but this defensive line gives Michigan a chance. It boils down to, can Michigan's offense sustain what we saw in the second half last week against Oregon, where they were able to really stretch the field and not play offense in a box? Can you stretch the field with the pass game to open up the run, which is the antithesis of what we see Michigan be offensively the last 3 years? That's what they have to do this year. Can they start this game the way they started the second half? That is really the key for Michigan in this week's game. Throw to set up the run, use the pass game vertically to really dictate as far as their offensive game plan is concerned. Early down passing is a big key. Will Michigan do that and sustain it? If they can, they'll have a chance to win this game.
Certainly going to have their hands full defense and offense as they take on this Indiana team today. Our 24/7 Michigan insider Sam Webb giving us the latest on Will Johnson and the Wolverines ahead of that game against Indiana. But let's hear what our former players have to think about this particular situation. With so much at stake in terms of his future, DK, how big of a conundrum is it for a player to play hurt versus preparing for the NFL draft?
Oh, Jeremy, this is a topic I can get emotional about because I have some strong thoughts on it, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think, because this is a trend that has really picked up, I would say, in the last decade. Because when I was playing, this was a long time ago, no one even thought about it. Like, you finished what you started. Now, it is a huge business. There are tens of millions of dollars at stake. Damien, I'll start with you. If you're Will Johnson, you're Michigan, you're not getting back to the Big Ten championship game, you're not getting back to a national championship, do you sit out the rest of the season to protect your draft stock, or do you finish out the season with your boys?
I hate that we've even gotten to a point where we have to have this conversation. Because I'm the same as you, Danny. Like, I play for Nick Saban, and you finish what you start. I mean, he used to tell guys all the time, the best way to get draft eligible and have teams look at you is by being on the field. They evaluate your availability. They evaluate your durability. But now we're in a time of where these kids have to think about their future. Like, in Will Johnson's case, just looking at the situation on paper, I would tell him to sit out, because he has much more to gain from sitting out and making it to the league as opposed to risking another injury. But that doesn't necessarily align with my core values, because, again, like, and Beanie, I know you come from the same era. What you start is what you finish. If you have the ability to get out there and play, you play. And that's not because of getting to the Big Ten championship. That's not because you want to make a run in the college football playoff. It's because of the bond that you made with your brothers throughout the course of the season, the spring spring training, the training camps, like everything you do, that's a part of being a program, being a brotherhood, having camaraderie. And so just to leave guys out to dry, basically to say, well, my draft stock is more important than you guys and all the work and all the effort that we put in. That don't sit right with me. It doesn't sit right with me. But again, we're in a new day and era, so everything's a little bit different now. I mean, we know that. Times have changed. Players' mentalities are different than when we played. So, I mean, Will Johnson has a very serious decision to make, and it's basically going to be up to him and his family and what he thinks is best for his career.
Yeah, I most definitely understand from our standpoint and the era we grew up in and the things that we were used to. But now you got to look at it a little bit differently. And the way scouts and GMs and all those guys view it, you're as good as what you put out on film. So if I'm a guy and I know that I'm going to be a lock of a first-round pick, I don't want to go out there with some type of ailment and I'm not at my best and I go out there and get roasted, especially at the corner position, because you are what you put out on tape. And when scouts and the evaluators go out and see that, they're going to judge you based on that. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, he was injured or he was banged up or he was going through this at that point in time. No, you went out there and played, so they expected you to go out there and play like the high-caliber athlete in which they thought you were. And if you don't, that's going to hurt you. Well, so I get it from that standpoint, not going out there and playing.
Now, if you're hurt, I think that's a different conversation. If you're not 100%, and that's what I would honestly do if I was a player, I would just say I'm not 100%.
Right.
If it's Will Johnson, I'm just like, this might take a while to get better from. If I'm a GM or a scout evaluating a player, I want somebody who starts and finishes the season. Because how do you know when you're a free agent with your team in the NFL, if it's your year that you're coming up, how do you know he doesn't do the same thing in the NFL? Exactly. Hey, I want to get paid. I'm up for a big contract. Exactly. I think it's something that has to be taken into consideration.
Fine line.
It is.
It's a very fine line.
That was my thought, because you still have some old school coaches, some old school GMs who have that mentality. Okay, you started the season, finish the season.
Yep.
I know you're not at 100%, but I want to see what you can do out there. I want to see how you still impact the game. Makes me think of guys like Mike Tomlin. Like, I know Bill Belichick isn't coaching at the moment, but somebody like him, they want to see guys go out and play through injury, because this is football. The injury rate is 100%. Yep. You're not going to be at 100% after the first game.
It's a complicated subject for sure. Let's send it back over to the other studio.
To the Twins we go. It's like looking in a mirror. Did not plan this today.
Back to back.
But what we did plan is to win some money. It's week 11 of the college football season. Parlay pick number 1 is on the other side. Stay with us. here on CBS Sports HQ. Time now for our parlay pick of the day, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Make every moment more. Right now, FanDuel is boosting your college football game day with a reward stack. That means multiple profit boosts to use on today's game. Scan that QR code on your screen and supercharge your bets on America's #1 sports book. We are ready to win some money with our own Mackenzie Brooks, and you've got a nice three-legger for us today.
Yeah, I got a good old three-legger. You know the deal by now.
Yes, we
and
do.
I feel pretty good about this, paying out around plus 500 here. We're going to start with the play I mentioned earlier. Texas team total over 34.5. Keep talking about the quarterback for Florida. I don't care who it is, okay? This Texas team is going to put up points. This Florida offense will not be able to stay on the field long enough. And what I like about Texas is their backup quarterback, Arch Manning, he's not taking his foot off the gas. Every single snap he has is really a chance to prove himself. So I do think even if he's the one coming in the fourth quarter and a blowout, they're still putting points on the board. And then we're going to move down to
be careful with this one. There might be something flying our way.
Yes, Bama money line. I love Bama here. I think this is a good spot for them. I like what Marcel Reed did with his mobility against this team. I think we could see the same thing from Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe's ceiling is phenomenally high, okay? We just have to see it under the bright lights, and I feel like we definitely will tonight. So that gives us a nice little payout. And then we're going to go CBS Game of the Week, Indiana, Michigan, taking all the points, over 48.5. A lot of this stemming from Indiana, right, in this pass-heavy offense going against a now even weaker Michigan secondary. So I would certainly act on that now. You could see that total potentially go up now with the Will Johnson news. But again, if Michigan wants any chance of keeping this close, it means putting points on the board for themselves as well. So give me the points. A lot of this stemming from Indiana team total, but I'm just going to play it safe with the full game over.
It's going to be a good one on CBS. You could catch kickoff at 3:30 from Bloomington. Here's just a quick recap of Mackenzie's three-legger. You did say what? About plus 500. We'll take it. She's going with the Texas team total over, set at 34.5, excuse me. Alabama to beat LSU on the money line. We know Damien Harris loves that. And Michigan, Indiana, the total over 48.5 points. More to come here on CBS Sports HQ. Next, we head to the Shoe, where #3 Ohio State is back in action today, taking on Purdue. The Buckeyes are coming off their best win of the season, taking down #6 Penn State in Happy Valley. Kickoff for today's game between Purdue and Ohio State is set for noon Eastern from Columbus. And we'll also head to Atlanta, where Heisman favorite Cam Ward is getting ready for today's showdown with Georgia Tech. He's thrown for 9 touchdowns and just 1 pick in Miami's past 3 games. Kickoff for #4 Miami and Georgia Tech is set for noon Eastern. And when we return, countdown to kickoff continues from Death Valley. We take you live out to Baton Rouge to check in with our own Josh Pate ahead of kickoff. Stay with us. We're back here on CBS Sports HQ, where our college football pregame coverage continues. Jordan Giorgio, Damien Harris, Danny Kanell, and Beanie Wells with you. Thanks so much for spending your game day morning with us. It's just about time to take you live out to Baton Rouge. But did you guys see this? A little bit of a Tiger controversy. LSU bringing back the tradition, having a live Tiger out at the games. But break it down for us, Danny, because you have a little bit of insight.
Yeah, this is Mike the Seventh, who lives right there outside the stadium in a gorgeous home. I mean, they have like this setup that's literally across the street from the stadium. Now you see him here in there inside eating his, dinner, it looks like, and it's got a little Crimson Tide effect to it. Yeah. But he's not the one they're bringing on the field. They're bringing Omar in from Florida. What? All the way from Florida. They're bringing him to be on the field.
That's wild.
I want to know why Mike the Tiger did to get screwed.
Yeah, there's a controversy. There's a controversy. And I know one guy who can confirm the news. It's our own Josh Pate. But Josh is a little busy. I don't know if he's going to answer. He's been putting in the work.
He got on the ripped sweatpants. You know he's ready to work.
I see a little arm shaking now.
Damien.
A little trembling. A little tremble.
Damien, you finally got your wish. There is Josh Pate's workout routine. Josh, it is so great to see you live for us out in Baton Rouge ahead of this huge primetime SEC matchup between Alabama and LSU. First and foremost, like how'd you pull some strings there? You like coach is going to put you in today, or what's the deal?
Hey, look, all I know is if I'm around a great facility, I'm going to find any way I can to weasel into that facility, which it kind of makes what I'm about to do in this hotel in a little while pale in comparison. But I hadn't been down here since 2019. Last time I was down here, let's see, Nick Saban was still the coach. Ed Orgeron was still the coach. There was no Tiger controversy. A lot's changed around Baton Rouge.
Yeah, and isn't that the first time that you took your show live on the road?
Yeah, it was. That was back in a different time. That was back when we kind of we had bubble gum and paper clips holding the entire operation together. The LSU folks kind of rocket shipped us, and I wouldn't even know Danny Kanell if it wasn't for LSU. Think about how different both of our lives would be.
Oh, well, Baton Rouge is a special place to you. Let's go ahead and get your take on this highly anticipated game. Both teams needing a win today.
Yeah, I think if you could tell me either ground game would be consistent, it would go a long way in giving me comfort. I look at LSU, some teams don't run the ball because they can't run the ball. They don't have the horses in the backfield. They don't have the guys up front. I don't necessarily look at LSU just on paper, especially in the offensive line, and think that. I talked to some of the coaches yesterday. They're kind of brutally honest about it. They're just saying we haven't leaned on it enough. We haven't committed to it enough. We should be able to do it. Let's do it. Okay, well, there are words and then there are actions. And then on the other side with Alabama, I remember going over there in the spring and Jam Miller and Justice Hayes along with Caden Proctor coming back and Booker and bringing Brailsford in at center and that offensive line. Same story. We should have a strength running the football. And then that's been very sporadic this year. And what that does is it just puts more emphasis on being able to drop back 40 or 50 times and throw the ball. Garrett Nussmeier's not equipped to do that. So he's turned the ball over a lot. That's partly his fault and partly candidly his coaching staff's fault for putting him in a poor position. So if you could give me confidence that either facet, ground game, will be impactful and consistent tonight, I'd love that. Weather, I think more and more the more we move throughout the day is going to figure to be a huge factor tonight. Heavy rain, thunderstorms potentially in the forecast. We may not get out of there until like 3 a.m. If Jalen Milroe is right and that factors in, it should lean heavily Alabama. If Jalen Milroe's legs are back, if he can stretch the field vertically, honestly, if that's the case and it's dry, I would lean slightly Alabama. But because all this stuff's been thrown in a blender and there is a little bit of inconsistency both sides, I just let home field take it for me. I leaned really, really slightly to LSU.
Hey, there's going to be a ton of talent on the field. I mean, obviously, we know what Alabama has. Nick Saban has said in the past, you can shake a tree anywhere in Louisiana and find a five-star guy. So with so much talent on the field tonight on display, who is going to be the X factor in this game that's not named Jalen Milroe or Garrett Nussmeier?
It's been a little while since we talked about Ryan Williams, hasn't it? It's been it seems like it's been a few weeks since we saw him break games open, and I would think him on Alabama side kind of hypocritical sounding, as I just talked about the run game the whole 2 minutes and 30 seconds I took up. But I would say Ryan Williams, and then we look at him, Damien, but also Jeremy Bernard was brought in here from Washington for games like this. It may be that it's 3 or 4 catches, but if it's 3 or 4 catches in the biggest moments, then that's the difference in this game. Then on the other side, Kyron Lacey, Aaron Anderson, like those guys will not in my estimation, light up the stat sheet tonight. I don't expect some like Devontae Smith type performance, but if you can come through on 3rd and 9 in a big moment and move the chains and give your team a fresh set of downs, could be the difference here.
All right, Pate, let's go down the street in the SEC to Oxford, Mississippi with another big matchup. And now we've got Lane Kiffin to try to do something he hasn't yet, and that's really have that big signature win over one of the powerhouses in the SEC with the Georgia Bulldogs coming to town. They come in with questions themselves with Carson Beck. What are you expecting out of this matchup there in Oxford?
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to win the game, Danny. I think last year this was just abuse to watch. This was 52-17. Georgia running the ball at will. They had over 600 yards total offense. And I'm telling you, that's not tasting your blood. Like, that's just getting splattered. And that forces you as a team and a program in Ole Miss to go back to the drawing board. They took it so personally that they didn't have their program and their team in a better position to succeed. And they went out and got a defensive line pretty much wholesale changing their front. They won't look anything today like they looked then. And conversely, this Georgia ground game is in the 90s this year. So they haven't been their normal effective self. This Ole Miss run defense is top 5 in the country. And so what I think about when you tell me those two things is not only might they have success against Georgia's ground game, they might have success with 4 against Georgia's ground game, at which point I take a turnover-prone, interception-prone Carson Beck, and I have him throwing into 7-man coverage most of the day. I have a lot of attention able to be paid to him, and that's not typically the dynamic. In years past, if Ole Miss played a Bama or a Georgia, they got to go all out to stop the run if they got a prayer of stopping it. This year's team can stop it in a more conventional manner, and I think because of that and because you just said Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have not gotten that signature, that big win, I think today's the day. I think they're going to get it done. They're going to beat Georgia.
Josh, you just mentioned Beck and his turnovers and what he's been doing the last couple of weeks and, you know, his erratic throws. Now, you said Ole Miss is going to win this game. I believe they're going to win it as well. Do you see a situation if Georgia loses this game, they still get into the college football playoff? Do you think they'll still be one of those, you know, top-tier teams, or do you think they drop out of this race?
I think they'd still be in it because I think they'd just be another one of these 2-loss teams. I mean, this is, I can't believe, Beanie, you asked me this question. This is Kanell's favorite topic. Like, how many 2-loss teams can we have in the SEC? So you just get thrown in this pot along with your A&Ms and you're the winner of Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee's in there. Then Ole Miss would be in there. And we are headed, by the way, for a very, very uncomfortable conversation with Greg Sankey just sitting in the corner of the room with his arms crossed because some of these teams are going to get left out, maybe with 2 losses. But I think Georgia will still be in it. I think also they finally have a benefit that they haven't had. They finally get to yell, we played a really, really, really tough schedule because they did away with divisions. Georgia was the biggest beneficiary of the division format, along with Florida and Tennessee being down during the divisional era. So they finally went to Alabama this year. They went to Texas. They went to Ole Miss. And by the way, that Texas win on the road will be a gigantic feather in their cap that's probably one of the biggest that anyone in that 2-loss group would have to tout. So I think they'd still be in it.
Well, it'll be a huge game from Oxford. It would be a huge game and a huge statement for Lane Kiffin and company. You know, also like Baton Rouge, this game, the weather is supposed to be a little questionable as well. Well, we can't let you go, Josh, without talking about the #1 team in the nation. Oregon seeks a comfortable win over the worst team in the Big Ten today as it hosts Maryland. We know Dan Lanning's team isn't overlooking lesser opponents. So with that being said, what are you paying attention to in this one?
I'm paying attention to the same thing we paid attention to when they played Purdue, when they played Illinois. These are perceived to be inferior opponents, and Oregon's a big favorite. But, you know, we see big favorites every week stumble or outright fall. So I've always had immense respect for the programs that just steamroll when they're supposed to steamroll. And then they're up for the big games, too, but they play to a standard. So it's a consistent level of performance every week. And that should be the norm, but it's not because you're dealing with human beings, a bunch of them. So to get them to operate at that standard, Damien Harris played on a team like that for a long time. Dan Lanning has that kind of operation there. Now, humility is only 1 week away, so pay attention to it, but I think Oregon will roll again today.
All right, it's going to be a late night for Josh Pate. Enjoy it. Have so much fun out there in Death Valley. We'll be watching. Catch more from Josh every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 8 p.m. You can watch Josh Pate's college football show on YouTube. He has everything you need to know to be a part of the greatest game. Don't go anywhere. More to come on CBS Sports HQ. How has Indiana Indiana's head coach Curt Cignetti been able to turn around this program behind quarterback Curtis Rourke and lead them to an undefeated 9-0 season. We break it down next. Welcome back to College Football Pregame here on CBS Sports HQ. 11 weeks into the season now, and few teams remain undefeated. Indiana is one of those teams. It is remarkable the job that head coach Curt Cignetti has been able to do. He suggested the day he was introduced as Indiana's head football coach that the Hoosiers would be in the Big Ten championship game this season, and they are well on their way. And we are joined now by 24/7 sports reporter Jeff Robjohns here on CBS Sports HQ. And Jeff, what we're hearing is that there's now negotiations ongoing for head coach Curt Cignetti to stay at Indiana. What's the latest?
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. I put some of the details in the story the other day, but Indiana, when they initially hired him, it was a 6-year deal, average of around $4 million per year with a number of incentives. By winning 6 games, he already got a 1-year extension as kind of like an evergreen clause. He's already earned several bonuses. At the end of this year, he's going to be around probably ballpark $5 million. But what they're working to do is put together a new contract to keep him. I think he'll get a significant raise. And probably a pretty reasonable extension. But with what he's done, you know, Indiana's first 9-0 season ever. They've never won more than 9 games. So obviously, if they win today against Michigan, you're talking about a historic season, 10 wins. the number 8 in the college football playoff. So Indiana Athletic Director Scott Dolson, IU President Pam Witten, I'm told, are both fully engaged. That was the phrase I was told, fully engaged and doing everything they can to keep Kirk Cignetti as the football coach at Indiana University.
Jeff, you mentioned him getting a significant raise. Is there a number that comes to mind that you expect?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where they're going to end up, the two sides. My guess is to keep him, you're probably going to be come in somewhere around 8. I think it's going to take around $8 million per year. I think that's pretty much industry standard for what he's done at a school like Indiana. I think Indiana can pay that. That's just my opinion, but from what I know, I think so. And then I think the other things that come into play are increasing the salary pool for the assistants. Some things like that involve, the peripheral things that matter in winning. And I think Kirk Cignetti wants to make sure that he has an opportunity to win, and he feels that right now at Indiana. So as long as Indiana gives him a commitment and gives a commitment to the other things that are necessary, paying the assistants, facilities, NIL, et cetera, I think Indiana's got a very good chance to keep Kirk Cignetti.
All right, 24/7 sports reporter Jeff Rob Johns joining us here on a college football Saturday to break down the very latest as Indiana and head coach Kirk Cignetti are in negotiations for a contract extension, and well-deserved, Danny.
Oh, absolutely. I think we were talking about the numbers. I think it's 8 or 9 potentially, and you'll probably see a significant buyout number so that if somebody comes sniffing around, that price will be extremely high. But this has been the story of the college football season. Kirk Cignetti slam dunk for Coach of the Year, and I think he's just getting started at Indiana.
Coach of the Year. I love to hear it. Yeah, you do?
Agree.
All right, well, we're talking about teams now that have an undefeated season. Obviously, Indiana, one of them. The road appears a bit difficult, though, for the Hoosiers. They of course, today face Michigan on CBS, that game at 3:30. But this is not the same Michigan team that won the national championship and that we expected to see as we entered this season. They'll then have a bye week before heading to Columbus, Beanie, to face your Ohio State Buckeyes, a team they haven't beaten since 1988.
Yeah.
What are you expecting?
No, it's going to be a tough matchup. Obviously, it's not going to be a walk in the park for Ohio State when they do face Indiana. I think Indiana's one of the more potent teams, especially on the offensive end, that Ohio State will have seen outside of Oregon. And then when you talk about Kirk Cignetti and his offense, or his confidence that he has in his football team, and then the players, they just believe in what he preaches, and that confidence is resounding throughout that locker room. They're a tough football team on both sides of the ball. Curtis Rourke is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football to me. So he's deadly with his arm. He can pull the ball down and run it. You got to watch out if you're Ohio State. This is a game you have to have circled.
So do you think they do it? Do you think they stay undefeated?
I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm nervous. I said it a couple weeks ago. I'm legit nervous for Ohio State in this football game because of how good they are.
Especially if Indiana goes out and puts up some big numbers against Michigan today, because correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan Day's record against Michigan is 1-3. Yeah. So if you go into Michigan and you put up some big numbers and you get a lot of confidence going into that Ohio State team, beating a team that you know Ohio State has trouble with, that's got to give you some extra confidence going into Ohio State. So I know we can look ahead and we can look for the Indiana-Ohio State matchup, but it's going to start with today. You got to have a big performance against Michigan. You have to play well. They've got to run the ball well. Curtis Rourke has to be phenomenal like he's been all season. They got to keep on the same Kirk Cignetti wave that they've been on. If they do that, get a big win today, I would be very confident with Indiana against Ohio State.
Very confident?
Very confident.
Jeez.
Very confident.
This guy's been taking shots.
I'm going to tell you to your face, Beanie. I'm not sold on Ohio State. This Penn State win, I'm not sold on it.
They've been a little Jekyll and Hyde.
They have. Look at Will Howard. Yeah. He's been up in the air. And, we look at the Penn State game last night. We're like, okay, he played well. He closed it out with his legs at the end of the game. He turned the ball over.
Yeah, he shot a pick six.
He shot a pick six. He still fumbled going in the end zone. I mean, Will Howard, Ohio State, we know they've had trouble with their offensive line, keeping those guys healthy. Quinshawn and Travion, they had a little bit better day against Penn State, but they still have not been the two-headed monster that we've expected. So, with all that being said, I'm not sold. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, you may not be sold, but for that game, odds makers are, because Ohio State, a 9.5-point favorite when they see Indiana. Okay, let's get to another team that is undefeated. That's BYU. They're 8-0 on the season. They will see rival Utah today, followed by games against Kansas and Arizona State. Danny, we absolutely love what the Cougars have been able to do this season. We love that they are ranked accordingly. We give them all their praise, but with all that being said, you do not trust this BYU Cougars team.
And I still love Kalani Sitake. He's awesome.
We'll throw
I
that
still
in
love
there.
Jake Retzlaff, their quarterback.
Why?
I love
Tell
the
me
story.
why.
I think they have a schedule coming up that starts tonight at Rice-Eccles Stadium on the road that is very tricky. And in the Big 12 specifically, you've got a conference where there's not a lot of separation between the top, which is BYU, and the very bottom. Now, the very bottom's kind of starting to fall off a little bit, but you can go way deep, all the way down to Kansas, which is a team that they have to play after Utah, and they could lose that game. I think BYU finishes the season not with 1 loss, not with 0 losses, but with 2 losses.
Wow.
Coming down the stretch, it's when it gets real for this BYU team, and I just am concerned about the schedule getting tougher as they finish things out in the back end. And I have been the biggest proponent that they are not getting the respect they deserve from the rankings. If they do win up, I will still carry that torch and pound the table, but I understand why people look at them, because it's the Big 12, it's the schedule, and I think it catches them on the back end.
That's why I had to preface it all with that. I know you still love them. I know you still do. All right, elsewhere, you guys, Army remains undefeated on the year. They are 6-0 in the ACC right now. They'll still see North Texas today, followed by a ranked matchup next week against Notre Dame, then UTSA and Navy, of course. Can you see this Army team remaining undefeated on the season?
Throughout the rest of the year, I don't know. When you got to play Notre Dame and how they played the last couple of weeks, they figured it out with Riley Leonard and who he is for their offense. Bryson Daly, we know how good he is. We know Kanye Udu and what they can do in the run game. But, man, it's going to be a tough task versus Notre Dame. I think they'll get by today. I think they'll, with Bryson Daly coming back off injury, they'll do well today. But Notre Dame, that's going to be a gauntlet to go through.
I would even look at the Navy and Army game at the end of the year, because anything can happen in those service academy games. I mean, Navy, granted, they got pounced by Notre Dame, but they're still a competent, capable team. So I could see that matchup going either way as well.
Do you guys know it's Veterans Day on Monday? Like,
don't call us a C word. Don't call us a C word. Say that
You
for
and
kids.
Mackenzie are a bunch of commies, man. What's happening?
Danny, the shots fired here on set. I can't. Well, we will see who remains undefeated at the end of the season. You know, on the other side, there's one team that does look to remain undefeated, and that is the Miami Hurricanes. We will talk about them when we return with more here on College Football Pregame. Miami not only looking to stay undefeated, but they also want some revenge over Georgia Tech, who spoiled their season last year. Do the Yellow Jackets do it again? Find out next. on college football pregame on CBS Sports HQ. We are taking you all the way up to those noon kickoffs. Stacked Week 11 is on tap, and there are some games that we're going to be zeroing in on that kickoff less than 30 minutes from now. Let's begin with number 4, Miami at Georgia Tech, looking for some revenge because we know what happened to them last year. What are you expecting in this one, or what are you watching for?
So, Jordan, the interesting thing is I've been following this line for the past 24 hours or so. Miami was an 11.5-point favorite, but all of a sudden there was a bunch of money coming in on Georgia Tech, where now Miami's only an 8.5-point favorite. And what that tells me is that Haynes King, who has been missing from this Georgia Tech team because he's been hurt for the past few weeks, is going to play. There's, people are reporting that he's out there warming up on the field. I think he's going to give it a go, and that is huge news for Georgia Tech because they have not been even close to the same team with Zach Pyron. It was a little bit of a disaster. He's their lifeblood. He's their leader, Haynes King is. And, Jordan, you mentioned the game last year. He had the game-winning touchdown last year against the Miami Hurricanes. The other thing to watch out for, too, let's see the clock management at the end of the game, because last year Mario Cristobal did not take a knee when he could have knelt on the ball, and the game would have been over. Instead, they fumbled and gave Haynes King that opportunity, and one of the more embarrassing moments of Mario Cristobal's career.
I want to piggyback off what you talked about with Haynes King in this offense, because it flips my perspective to Miami's defense. That has been the biggest issue for this Miami team all year. They're the favorite in the ACC right now. They're almost a shoe-in everybody's bracket to get that 2 or 3 seed as the ACC champions. But when we talk about the college football playoff, and we talk about national championship caliber teams, I want to ask you guys, has there been a national champion in the past 10 years, 20 years with a defense this bad?
Yes.
Name them.
LSU 2019. At this point in the season. So
really? Because me and Mackenzie actually did, so we crunched some numbers, and the numbers say otherwise.
So on the back end of the season, they did start to get better, but there was a game around probably 7 or 8. They were playing Ole Miss, who was average that year, and it was like 35-30, like in about the third quarter. And then all of a sudden, LSU just kept scoring. They ended up winning 52-38. And that was when I was saying the same thing, like, is this defense good enough to win a championship? I think the old motto of defense wins championships has changed to just enough defense wins championship. And that's why I would describe Miami's defense. It's just enough to win, but offense is winning championships. And I think that's clearly the formula for Miami. And I think their defense will get better over the back month of the season.
You know where I'm going to challenge that is we're talking about the SEC
Thank you.
and the ACC.
Thank you.
They're playing bad defense in the ACC versus teams that don't have the same caliber of players. So that's the question that I have. I'm right there with you. I don't know if Miami can win a championship playing this way whatsoever. No. Every week a dogfight. That got to be strenuous just on the mental of the coaching staff and the players. Cam Ward single-handedly changed that franchise 100%.
Yes.
But when you play that way on the defensive side, Danny, I don't know.
And I just want to cut you off, Dan. I don't agree that the formula has changed. I think if Miami does win the national championship, then we look at it and say, okay, it's not about defense wins championships anymore. You just got to play good enough defense, like Danny said. I'm not sold that formula for winning is gone yet.
I just was checking some numbers here.
Oh, no.
Do you know who Miami's best defensive performance was against? Against the vaunted SEC Florida Gators, where they went into the swamp and won 41-17, holding the Gators to fewer points than the Georgia Bulldogs did. Like, we don't worry about their defense, and I get it. Like, I'm just making it case.
Florida's a different team from the beginning of the year to now, too.
Well, I'm just saying, like, we're talking about Miami's defense. Their best performance was against an SEC team in the Florida Gators.
So you two do not see them going undefeated this season?
I know, but as for getting to the ACC championship, I think they can do it because, to Beanie's point, they're playing ACC teams. This is not the same caliber. That's not the same style of football. You're not going against the same athletes. You're not going against the same cultures, the same programs. But once you get into that playoff bracket, that's where I have concerns, because you're going to be playing against the best 12 teams in the country, teams that you have not faced all season long, who have better players, who have better schemes, who have better coaches. So I definitely worry about this Miami team once they get to the 12-team playoff because of their defense.
To what you guys are talking about, and this goes back to the reason I compare him to 2019 LSU, I thought Joe Burrow had the perfect season. He threw 60 touchdown passes. He was insane, like otherworldly. And I think if Miami is to win a national championship, I think it'll be because Cam Ward will have to replicate that type of performance.
Because I would say that Miami's offense, like, I know we've been talking a lot about defense, but Miami's offense is not nearly as good as that 2019 LSU offense was, in my opinion. in my opinion.
He's thinking hard
It's not
about
the
it.
same. And I mean, Jamar Chase and Jefferson on the outside.
Yeah,
Those
Clyde
dudes,
Edwards
and we'll see, I don't think Xavier Restrepo is in that category yet. But I do think statistically they could be in that vicinity. We'll see.
We'll see. All right. We'll wait and see. We did, you guys, see quarterback Haynes King for Georgia Tech warming up ahead of kickoff. We will continue to keep you posted because Georgia Tech will certainly need him if they want to pull off the upset. Okay, let's turn our focus here to the SEC. It's Florida taking on number 5 Texas. Longhorns, you know, have lost a little bit of consistency, I would say, in rhythm offensively. I know Steve Sarkisian has come out to say their mojo offensively is one thing that they want to get back. How do they do that today against Florida?
Well, it starts with Quinn. He's their guy, and we've had this conversation before. Is he healthy? Is there a lack of playmakers around him? Like, what is holding Quinn Ewers back? Is he not seeing the field well? Is he not identifying the rushes? Something has slowed him down. And when your leader is playing a tick slower than what you expect, that affects the rest of your team. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. Quinn Ewers has to come out and be the Quinn Ewers that he was when he played against Alabama last year. You know, that's the Quinn Ewers that we need to see, not for this game, but for the rest of the season, for Texas to have a shot potentially to get in the SEC championship. You know, we'll see what happens with some other teams. But then once again, once you get to that 12-team playoff, it all starts with Quinn, and it revolves around him. You've got to protect him better. We saw in the Georgia game, their tackles were horrendous against Georgia's pass rush. And even the philosophy of when Georgia would stem from a 3-4 front to a 4-4 even with 2 linebackers mugged up, then it was like the linemen didn't know who to block. The guards and the tackles were going out to one guy, and they were letting free rushers right up the middle, and that affects your quarterback. So to me, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Quinn Ewers, they have to find a way to get him back comfortable, get him back seeing the field and dispersing the ball to his playmakers in a way that lifts this offense up to be one of the better teams in the country.
I totally agree with you, Damien. I look at this Texas offense, and I do not think it's as impressive as we thought it was going to be, and it wasn't only against Georgia. And what else I don't know if it's Quinn Ewers, is it the oblique issue that is slowing him down and preventing him from throwing the ball down the field? Quinn Ewers' average depth of target, so how far he's throwing the football, is 5.9 yards in 2024. That is ranked 79th out of 79 quarterbacks in the Power 5. So they are throwing the ball short and underneath. Why aren't they? Everyone wants to have big plays, and especially Sark. This is a big play offense.
Yes.
Why is everything underneath? Is it because the defenses are dictating that, or is it because there's something more serious, or have they lost their mojo, which I think is probably more likely the case?
You know, I think the way to get the mojo back is run the football.
Yeah.
Establish a run up front. When you look at Texas teams over the years, the good Texas teams, there hasn't been one of those teams to where you can sit back and say they've been a predominantly throw the ball down the field football team. Even with Colt McCoy, with Vince Young, they've had a stable running game. And when you look at this team right now, they've kind of gone away from that. And they got a good running back in Travion Wisner. He can run the football and establish some physicality up front. I think they need to do that, and then that'll make everything easier on the quarterback and the playmakers to get him the ball.
We haven't had this conversation in a long time, but I just want to bring it up because we're talking about Quinn. We're talking about Texas offense as a whole, but Danny and I hit on Quinn a lot. Is there still a thought that this Arch Manning situation can play a factor for Quinn right now? Because from what I haven't been to Austin, I haven't been to DKR, but what I do hear is everybody walks around with an Arch Manning jersey on. Every fan, every grandmother, every 3-year-old has on an Arch Manning jersey, and they're waiting for when he's going to take over. So I want to bring that conversation back up, because I think just as much as the oblique injury, just as much as losing your mojo, well, having a guy behind you that everybody is dying to get in the game, dying to support, that plays a big factor on your mental psyche.
100%. I mean, when you're a guy that is the quarterback, right, initially the unquestioned quarterback, and you got this high-prize recruit with a big name behind him, and he's shown that he can play and can play at the same level as you, you're certainly worried about him stepping in at any point in time. We already watched him get pulled versus Georgia in that game, and we watched him come in. Obviously, it didn't work out in a successful way, but your mental as a quarterback, and when you're going out there and playing and you're saying, you know what, I can't make a mistake, I got to be perfect every single play, that's scary as a QB.
Yeah. I was even, well, whenever we were upstairs doing our notes this morning, I was watching a show where they were interviewing 2 Texas players, and all they were asking about was Arch Manning.
Yeah,
it's Arch, you remember that, right?
Yeah,
They're like, oh, is Arch Manning the best dancer on the team? Does Arch Manning have the best celebrations? Oh, well, we know that Arch Manning at any other program would be a starting quarterback. Well, if I'm Quinn Ewers, I'm like, bro, what?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Show me some love.
Come on, show me some love.
Throw me
In
a
the
bone.
preseason and the first month of the season, a lot of people had this conversation. What is Arch Manning's status on the team? And I would have shot it down and said, he is the backup, Quinn is the man.
Yes.
Sark's changed all of that by
Georgia.
benching him against Georgia.
Yep.
That, to me, tells me anytime Texas struggles, there is the threat that Arch Manning could come in, and I wonder how that impacts Quinn Ewers mentally.
Yeah.
Maybe that is why he's playing safer. I don't want to throw picks, so let me check it down, take these underneath throws. It is a very real situation.
Well, we know that we'll see Ewers today. We'll see if we see Arch Manning as well. But for Florida, their quarterback situation is still a little bit questionable. We did see, you guys, DJ Lagway, who is a Texas native, questionable to play still today. He is a game time decision, as you see there. He is taking reps, Danny, with the second team. This comes from our friends over at 24/7 Sports. What does that tell you?
I think it tells you he's dressing out. I think it's an emergency type situation. I still am not going to believe that he's starting. I don't think it's the smart thing to do. I think this is strictly if Aiden, because they're getting deep on the depth chart, right? They lost Graham Mertz to start the season. Then it was Lagway. So you're on number 3. Are you looking at a potential, some type of walk-on that has to come off the bench that really becomes a, a liability? That to me says that DJ's out there in case something, gets hurt with Aiden Warner, and then he has to come off the bench. So Jordan, I'm still not thinking that he's going to play. I could be wrong, right? I mean, maybe Billy Napier. And the one thing I will say this, I love is that I've heard that DJ Lagway is trying to make the case. I mean, he might be out there saying, watch me, coach. I am ready to go. But I am still, if I'm Napier, saying, I love the energy. I love the mindset, but just take it easy.
All right, well, if we don't see him today, we will see Aiden Warner, who was 7 of 22 passing against Georgia last week after Lagway went down with his injury. So we will wait and see there as Lagway remains a game-time decision, taking you all the way up to noon kickoff from Austin. All right, let's get to the Big Ten here. Ohio State's Ryan Day has never lost to an unranked opponent. They face a Purdue team today that is winless in conference play. It's a game that kind of gives the Buckeyes a chance to get a fast start out there. What are you expecting in this?
Yeah, like you said, I'm expecting them to get to a fast start, and I'm expecting to shore up the offensive line. I thought they played really good last week versus Penn State. There were a couple plays where Abdul Carter kind of got after the quarterback, but them figuring out the little issues and wrinkles that they need to get squared away on the offensive end, this is the game to do it. This is the game to open up that passing game, push the ball downfield like he talked about wanting to do a little bit more, get Jeremiah Smith involved heavy, and get the run game going. That's something that's been missed consistently for Ohio State this year is the run game. They played well down the stretch versus Penn State, but they got to do it in a big way this week.
I was going to say, but this is a potential sleeper game. It is.
Not with Purdue.
Beanie, what did you do to this man?
No. This ain't a shot. This is not a shot. And I'm not trying to put out any bold predictions here. What I am saying is Ohio State is coming off a big win against Penn State. Next week, they've got Indiana coming to town. Those are 2 humongous matchups that shape and define your season. This Purdue game doesn't, no disrespect to Purdue, but this doesn't mean anything to Ohio State other than, we need to iron out some wrinkles. We can test this and see if this works. Can we get this guy more involved? It's kind of like a
scrimmage?
Yeah, essentially. Okay. It's kind of like an open practice scrimmage for these guys. But when you've got a big matchup that you just came off of, Ryan Day's feeling great about himself because he got his top 5 win, and you're staring down the Indiana Hoosiers who are coming to town next week. Everything that Kirk Cignetti has done, Curtis Rourke, I'm not saying that these guys are overlooking Purdue. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's the potential for that. And Ohio State has proven this season to play with their food when they're playing lesser competition to start out the game. And then, in the second half, they start to blow the game open. But with the history of Ohio State and how they start games against lesser opponents, and you look at the matchups between Penn State and Ohio State, and then Ohio State and Indiana, I think there's a potential for there to be a little bit of sleepwalking at the early stages of the game, and then they start trying to get it going second quarter, third half.
But I think Ohio State are still feeling the remnants of the Nebraska game. They know they don't have any room for error. So I think this is a completely different team mentally. After the end of the game versus Penn State, did you not see Ryan Day and the emotion that he showed after winning that game? When you got a coach that shows that type of emotion, your players feed off that. They understood that week going into that game how important it was for them to right the ship and control their own destiny. I can't see this as a letdown whatsoever.
I can't believe Damien just offended you.
Two
Mike Doss, who's a 3-time All-American, at the game. Like, he's ready to go.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I think you guys are both right, because I think there's a chance that it's a noon kick, it's sleepy. I think it could start slow.
Yes.
But I think Purdue is so bad that Ohio State will eventually flip the switch. They'll wake up and they'll be able to make it a stat game. Like, this should be one of those games where the coaches are talking about, hey, did we get Will Howard, like, his 300-yard pass game? Do we get the backs? Do we get them both over 100? Like, it's one of those types of games, I think, when it's all said and done.
It kind of sounded like you said exactly what I said.
Yeah.
It kind of sounded like you know disrespect. Jordan, quarterback.
Listen, I will say, I have two things. Purdue is clipping this off. They're playing it in the locker room right now. And Beanie, all you need to do, listen to me, advice, just replay in your head. This is the same guy that said he almost went to Ohio State because he loved you so much, okay? Just never forget that. All right, let's make some money on the other side.
State, listen.
Parlay Party is on the other side of this break. Don't you forget it. Just keep replaying that in your head, okay, Beanie?
Oh, man.
Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
And that really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Wait a minute, get it how you live it. 10 toes in when we standing on business.
They've worked and they've got their just rewards. The NWSL playoffs are here on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus.
Saturdays at 3:30. It's big time. Will the Hoosiers keep their undefeated season and playoff hopes alive when they host defending champs Michigan? Today on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Time now for our Parlay Partay, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, FanDuel is boosting your college football game day with a reward stack. That means that you'll get multiple profit boosts to use on today's games. All you got to do, scan the QR code on your screen and supercharge your bets on America's #1 sportsbook. We are taking you all the way up to noon kickoffs, about 13 minutes from now. So it is time to lock in our 5-leg parlay. Should I kick us off?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because we just got news.
Come on.
What did you just say?
Well, we need to get a winner. We need to hit one of these. So you need to lead us off.
What was everyone drinking this morning?
You went last.
Listen, we just heard. I did go last week. You're right.
Switching it up.
Listen, we just got word in the break that we did see quarterback for Georgia Tech, Haynes King, taking reps with the, you said starting center. Okay, you like confirmed it for us. We saw it. I'm taking Georgia Tech on the money line sprinkle against Miami today, handing Cam Ward and company their very first win of the season. I know Georgia Tech coming off 2 back-to-back losses. The 2 Cam Ward. No. Listen, stop shaking your head.
Miami's
I'm rolling with
it.
Yes, by Georgia Tech and Haynes King today. I'm locking it in.
We laughed at Jordan before.
They did laugh at me before, and look how that turned out. Damien, who you got?
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Oh,
we missed you for your drum roll.
Thank you.
All right, drum roll, please. Beanie, look me in my eyes.
I knew something was
I'm going Purdue covers the 37.5 point spread against Ohio State.
And we were worried about my pick. Come on.
Game where they just came off a big win against Penn State. They're looking ahead to Indiana. They start the season. They start games slow all season against lesser competition. Give me Purdue cover.
I'm trying to think, who was the coach? Was Urban Meyer the coach when he was recruiting you?
Give me Purdue.
Did he tell you something that you didn't like or something?
You know what Urban did? Actually, I'll tell you real quick. I went to camp, and this was after they already offered me. It's like, yeah, we want you. Well, I was wearing my high school cleats at the camp, and we wore navy and white. And he just stepped all on my shoes. It just...
It was the blue.
It was. But I ain't got nothing to do with Purdue covering today.
This is not feeling like a team parlay. This is feeling like a targeted. I'm just going to take Texas team total. I've talked about it all day, over 34.5 points. I don't care who the quarterback is. They will not be able to stay on the field long enough to keep this Texas offense off the field. And I've had some success with this early in the season. Games where we feel like Arch Manning might come in garbage time. He is not taking his foot off the gas. Every single snap is an opportunity for him to prove himself. So I think we go over that 34.5.
I like it. It's Veterans Day.
It is Veterans Day.
Veterans Day. I support our troops unlike anybody else, but you know there's a saying in the military that you may not win the battle, but you will win the war. That's what I'm going with North Texas.
What?
I think North Texas wins the battle against the spread and covers while Army wins the war, which is the game.
Was a little nervous there.
Bryson Daly's still a little bit
where is this going?
6.5 points. So I'm taking North Texas home dog to keep it close. Army wins the war in the game.
Okay.
All right, we had a little drum roll here.
Yeah.
We had a little back and forth about this team earlier.
Oh, boy.
Drew Aller and Penn State. I like them to cover versus Washington. I think that spread is what, 12.5? 13.5. So I like them to win by 2 touchdowns. I think they bounce back from the loss versus Ohio State and rout Washington.
There you go.
All right. That will be our parlay pick of the day. We will see how this shakes out. You already know.
We'll see.
We'll see. She says. All right, well, a reminder right now, FanDuel is boosting boosting your college football game day with a reward stack. You could get multiple profit boosts to use on today's games. Scan that QR code on your screen and supercharge your bets on America's #1 sportsbook. We are not too far removed from noon kickoffs, which means it's time to make some game picks. Stay with us. Back here on college football pregame, we are less than 5 minutes away from noon kickoffs. We were talking about this game prior. Miami undefeated on the season, heading to Georgia Tech to take on the Yellow Jackets. And we just got word that quarterback Haynes King will be starting in this game. So good news for me. I will not be the problem this week in our 5-leg parlay. Moving on here, you guys, time for some game picks. We'll start in the SEC. It's number 3 Georgia taking on 16th ranked Ole Miss. We know the Rebels need a win. Are you riding with the lane train?
Ole Miss, give me the lane train.
Oh, my dogs. This is what we
Wait, I didn't even see that.
It's all about. The media's down on us. They had a bad game against Florida. That's the perfect recipe for Kirby Smart and this defense. This is how we get it done. Come from a bad week into a game that nobody believes in us.
Toddy. Give me Ole Miss.
Right.
Give me Ole Miss and Jackson Dart to get in that Heisman race.
Yes, okay, love it. Bold prediction there. All right, let's head now to Baton Rouge. It's number 11 Alabama taking on number 15 LSU. Both teams in contention for the college football playoff. Are you rolling with your Tide?
Roll, Tide, roll. We got some weather. We got some inclement weather tonight, so we have to focus on which team has the better ground game. Jalen Milroe, Justice Hayes, Jan Miller, Garrett Nussmeier can't throw the ball against the secondary with some rain. I'm going with the Tide.
I agree with you here. I like what Marcel Reed did on his feet against this team, and I think Jalen Milroe can do the same.
I'm nervous because of the weather, but I'm going to stick with my pick. I felt great about it all week long. I'm kind of tentative, but I'll take the Tigers at home.
I'm with you, Danny. I'm taking the Tigers. I like Garrett Nussmeier. Obviously, if it rains too much, that's going to impact the game, especially what he can do. But I think the Tigers find a way.
You knew he was going to grab. I mean, after the past 3 hours, that was a given. All right, last but certainly not least, you guys, it's our Big Ten game of the week on CBS. Kickoff is slated for 3:30. It's the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers taking on a struggling Michigan team. Who are you rolling with?
Give me Sig Nasty and the Hoosiers.
Sig Nasty, I love it.
I'm with you. It has to be them.
Okay. Smoke them if you got them. I'm going with my new best friend, Kirk Signetti.
Oh, your new bestie. I love it. Kent, how do you feel about that?
It's fine. Yeah. It's been a good run.
I'm going with the Hoosiers as well. They're going to dominate this football game.
All right. Absolutely. Interesting note, though. Michigan has won 28 of its last 29 meetings against Indiana. We will leave it there. Certainly not the same team in the past. But thanks so much for joining us here the past 3 hours on CBS Sports HQ. Don't go anywhere because we will have highlights, analysis, some more pregame coverage on the way. For Damien, Ken, Danny, Beanie, Jeremy, I'm Jordan Giorgio. We will see you next time. Thanks so much for hanging out.